Hey sleephead, welcome to the channel. Before I tell you why you wouldn't last a day in medieval times, tell me in the comments, where are you from and what time is it? Okay, let's begin. The air in medieval times is still, the stars are just beginning to fade, and in the deep silence of the early hours, a faint scratching breaks the dark. You are lying on a pile of straw. Your blanket is nothing more than a coarse wool cloth, damp at the edges. A single rat scurries past your head, then disappears into the wall. You blink, but there's no point. It's too dark to see anything. Only the rough texture of stone behind you, and the smell. It's thick, sour, and always there. Morning has come, but not with the sun. In medieval times, the day begins before the light. A rooster somewhere outside cries sharply, waking the village. Your bones ache, not from age, but from the cold, and the hard wood that presses through the thin layer of straw beneath your back. You sit up slowly, not because you're lazy, but because everything hurts. Your neck, your spine, your feet, all sore from yesterday. And every yesterday was hard. You cough. The smoke still lingers from last night's fire. If you were lucky to have one, the only warmth came from embers, and the breath of others packed into the same small room. You look over. 3 others share this space. 2 children sleep, noses red from cold. An old woman stirs in the corner, muttering a prayer in Latin. There is no bathroom, no privacy, no time to stretch. You grab your tunic, the only one you own. It's itchy, worn, dirt clings to it like a second skin, and though you shake it, the fleas do not fall off. You step outside. The door creaks open. Not a real door, just planks held together with a rope. Outside, it's barely lighter. Grey sky, mud, and the heavy smell of livestock. The entire village is waking. Dogs bark in the distance. A cartwheel creaks over cobbled stones. The church bell rings. It is not breakfast time. It is prayer time. You shuffle with others to the small wooden chapel, where cold stones wait for your knees. You kneel, and the priest speaks. The Latin words roll over you. You don't understand them, but you nod, because to not nod might mean punishment. Outside, the first real light breaks the horizon, and with it, the real work begins. You return home, but only to begin your chores. Your hands are already numb, but the bucket needs filling. The fire needs wood. You walk to the nearby stream, passing others just like you. And I'm hollow-eyed, wrapped in rags. No one smiles. I know. You scoop water. It's icy. Your fingers sting. And you try not to spill a single drop, because fetching it again takes time. Back at home, your mother boils the water over a fire that barely lives. She's coughing again, but there's no remedy, no medicine, only prayers. She hands you a crust of bread, stiff, mouldy, and dry, but you chew it slowly. But this is breakfast, and it might be the only thing you eat all day. Outside, your neighbor is already shouting at his son. A pig has escaped. A woman screams as chickens scatter. Children run barefoot through the mud. The village is alive now. Alive, but not awake. Not truly. Because everyone knows, this day, like every day, will take more than it gives. And now, you must get to work. The fields wait. The fields stretch before you now. Wet earth, heavy with last night's rain. Your boots, if you even own a pair, are soaked through. More likely, your bare feet press into the mud, each step sticky and cold. The wind whistles across the open land, biting at your skin. But you cannot stop. There is no break. Not for a child. Not for a peasant. Not for anyone who is not noble or holy. You begin to dig. Not with a shovel, there's only one, and your father has it. You use a crude wooden tool, almost more stick than spade. It splinters in your hands. Time is slow out here. The sun creeps over the sky, but gives no warmth. You squint. Dirt fills your nose. Your arms burn from effort. And still, the work is only beginning. You itch. You itch. Not from the cold, but from the lice. They live in your sleeves, in your collar, and they never sleep. You scratch without realizing it. Behind your ear, along your neck, on your chest, and others do too. It's normal. What isn't normal is being clean. That's a luxury, a fantasy. Baths are rare, maybe once a season, but only if you're lucky, or it's Easter. And even then, the same water is used for everyone. One tub, 7 bodies, and a film of filth left floating on the surface. You try not to think about that as you continue digging. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a bell. It's not for a feast. It's for Mass. Church again, because in this time, God is always watching, and everyone is always watching you. You stop your work. Your father nods, and you head back toward the chapel. Inside, the priest waits. He stands taller than most, wears finer clothes, and speaks with words that float just above your understanding. His sermon is about sin, about obedience, about the fires of hell. You sit in silence. The stone beneath you is cold. You shift your weight, but the discomfort never leaves. Around you, others kneel and pray, not always because they want to, but because they must. One whisper of doubt, for one misstep, and you could be punished, burned, beaten, banished. In this world, your soul belongs to the church. They baptize you, they marry you, they bury you, and in between, they watch you. When the service ends, you shuffle out again. Your stomach groans, but there's nothing waiting at home. Lunch does not exist. Only scraps if you're lucky. You sit on a stump, chewing a piece of dry root. You wonder, will dinner be better? Likely not. The stew, if there is any, will be thin. A broth made of onions and hope. No meat, not unless it's a feast day, and those only come with saints or deaths. But there's no time to dwell. You must return to your chores. You carry buckets of manure to the garden. Your hands blister. Your back bends. You are tired. But rest is far away. And then a cry breaks the air. A boy, maybe 10, is being dragged by his arm. The miller's son. He stole a piece of bread. The village gathers. No one dares stop it. He is tied to the whipping post. And the blows begin. 1, hold. 2, 3. You turn away, but you still hear the sound. Wet wood, dry skin. The church says to forgive, but the village says to obey. That night, the sky grows darker, and the wind sharpens. You return home, your muscles sore, and inside, your mother weeps quietly. Your sister is ill. A fever has taken hold. You bring her water, but she does not drink. You pray. But in this time, prayer is the only medicine. She shakes. Sweat pours from her face. She whispers your name, and then she sleeps. You lie in your straw once more. The fire is low. The rats return. The walls creak. Your father snores beside you. Your mother hums a hymn. Illic, the old woman in the corner mutters to herself again. The sky is darker than usual this morning. Clouds hang low, heavy and swollen. The air smells of damp earth and something else. Rain is coming, but it doesn't matter. You rise as always. No choice. No delay. No delay. Even the sick rise, or they fall behind forever. You rub your eyes. They sting from the smoke still lingering in the house. Your sister is asleep, still burning with fever. Her breathing is shallow. You whisper a prayer. It's all you can give. You eat nothing. Not today. There is nothing left. Even the stale bread is gone. You grab your tool, the same stick-like shovel from yesterday, and walk out. The mud swallows your feet. The sky is weeping now, and every drop feels like a small slap. You make your way to the fields, where others are already bent over, digging, hoeing, planting seeds they might never taste. The soil is stubborn. Your fingers are raw. Your back aches. But no one stops. If you pause, even for a moment, you might not finish your share. And if your share isn't finished, there are consequences. Your Lord doesn't care that it rained. He doesn't care that your sister is sick. He only cares that your dues are met. The bailiff arrives. He walks with a swagger, a whip in hand, and eyes that see everything. He says nothing at first, just watches, judges. Then he sees a boy sitting, a child, no older than 7. His hands too small to grip the hoe properly, his face pale with hunger. The bailiff does not care. He lifts the whip. Crack. The boy screams. His mother does not protest. She cannot afford to. You look away. Your stomach knots, but not from hunger, from helplessness. This is not cruelty. This is order. This is how things are. The hours crawl forward. Your clothes are soaked. The wind cuts through you like knives. Your breath forms clouds in the air, then disappears just as fast. A cart passes on the road nearby. A dead animal inside. The plague has returned. You hear whispers. 3 more were taken from the village down the hill. Boils, fever, death in 2 days. You don't speak. No one does. Silence spreads like the sickness. Later that day, you return to your lord's estate. Mimidri, not to rest, but to serve. He owns the land. He owns the tools. He owns the grain. And so, he owns you. You kneel as he passes. He does not acknowledge you. Why would he? You are beneath notice. He sits, wrapped in furs, eating a roasted bird. His dogs eat better than you do. You clean his stables, shovel his filth, polish his boots. Your hands shake from cold. But you continue, because stopping is not an option. Evening falls. You walk back home slowly. The path is slippery now. A girl behind you falls. She twists her ankle. She cries out for help. But no one stops. No one can afford to lose time. You help her anyway. Lift her onto your back. She is light, far too light for her age. She thanks you softly. You nod. You're not sure why you helped. Maybe you still have a heart. Home again. You step inside and find silence. Your sister no longer breathes. She is cold. Your mother wails, a sound too deep for words. It doesn't echo. It just sinks. You sit beside the straw where your sister slept. But there is no doctor, no burial yet. You will dig the grave tomorrow after your chores. You lie down, but not to rest, to survive another night. The rats are back. They chew near the corner. You don't stop them. Your eyes drift shut, but sleep doesn't come easy, because you know tomorrow will begin again, and you will rise before the sun, with hunger, with weakness, with no promise that you'll see another sunset. The sky is grey again, as if it's mourning with you. But the village does not stop for grief. Your sister's body lies still in the straw. There is no coffin, only a rough linen cloth wrapped around her thin frame. She will be buried before noon. You will dig the hole, not in a cemetery. You cannot afford that. She will rest beneath the old ash tree, where the soil is soft and the roots don't resist too much. The ground is wet. Your hands blister with each scoop of the shovel. The mud is heavy, clinging like guilt. Others watch, but they do not help. They have their own griefs, their own dead. By afternoon, she is in the earth. You say a few words, quiet ones. No priest comes. He only visits those who pay. And you have nothing. Later, the sun appears, briefly, and with it, a chance to gather herbs. Your mother sends you to the edge of the woods. She whispers of a woman, a healer, someone who knows the old ways. They call her a witch. But the villagers still visit her, one by one, when prayers don't work. You find her hut, hidden under moss and shadow. She opens the door before you knock. Her eyes are dark, but kind. She gives you a pouch of leaves and a bitter paste. Your mother, she says, has the cough. This will help. You thank her. She touches your arm. You're too thin, she whispers. You won't last the winter. You say nothing, because she is probably right. Back in the village, trouble brews. A pig has died suddenly. Its flesh darkened, its belly swollen. People whisper again. The plague, someone mutters. You brought it back. Another hisses. You went into the woods. Superstition is the law here, and logic is a threat. You lower your eyes, back away. Fear spreads fast, faster than illness, faster than reason. The next day, the blacksmith's daughter wakes with a rash. Red, hot, spreading fast, that's enough. The village council, 3 old men who trust no one, decide to act. They want fire, a scapegoat, someone to blame. They go to the woods. That night, you hear screaming. So far away. The witch is gone now. The air smells of smoke and ash. Your mother coughs again. Worse this time. You feed her the herbs, but they barely help. She whispers your sister's name in her sleep. You sit beside her, listening to the wind and to the silence between the gusts. And it's colder now, and the sky has gone bone white. You leave again at dawn, this time to gather water. But at the stream, you find something strange. The water is lower, murkier. A dead bird floats near the reeds. You try not to think about it. You fill the bucket. But when you drink from your hand, your stomach turns. You'll be sick soon too. You feel it in your bones. Later, you pass the apothecary's hut. He is a grim man, always muttering, always measuring. You ask if he has anything for fever. He nods, then asks for 3 coins. You have none. He shrugs and closes the door. That evening, the bailiff returns. He brings orders from the manor. New taxes, higher, because the noble lord must rebuild his granary, even as yours stands empty. People cry, beg. He laughs, and then leaves, dust rising behind his horse. You return home. Your mother has stopped coughing. Now, she's just still, her eyes open, but unfocused. You don't know if she hears you. You boil the herbs again, hold her hand, but deep down, you know, she's slipping away. You step outside, look at the sky. Stars emerge, slowly, like distant candles. You wonder, what did they feel? The ones who came before you, the ones buried in the same soil you now walk on? Did they also feel this silence, this helplessness? Did they also lie in bed at night, wondering if tomorrow would be their last? You return inside, lie beside your mother. Her breath is faint. You close your eyes and wait. Night falls hard in the medieval world. There are no lights, no gentle hum of machines, no glowing lamps behind glass. Only the flicker of a dying fire and the dark. Thick, unmoving, dark. You lie beside your mother, listening to her breath, slowing, to the wind outside, shifting, to something moving on the roof. A rat, maybe. Maybe. Or just the house creaking under its own weight. Your home is made of wood, mud, and time. It groans with every gust. Then you stare at the ceiling. Nothing moves, but your mind does. You remember what they say. About spirits. About demons. About creatures that crawl through cracks and whisper your name as you sleep. Your eyes flutter closed, but sleep doesn't come easy anymore. The dark isn't just empty here. It's full of memory, of fear, of things unseen. Outside, wolves howl in the distance. They've come closer this year, hungrier. A baby was taken last winter, dragged from a cottage by its legs. No one talks about it now, but everyone remembers. The men set traps, but the wolves were clever. Still are. You pull your blanket tighter around you. A thin, scratchy cloth, almost useless. The straw beneath you pokes through. It itches, smells faintly of rot. You shift, but there is no comfort. The cold has seeped into the walls, into the floor, into you. You try to sleep again. And finally, slowly, you drift. But rest doesn't stay long. You wake to a sound. Footsteps. Not inside. Outside. Slow. Deliberate. You hold your breath. Who walks this late? No one should. Not without cause. You hear a knock. Far off, 2 houses away. Then a second. Then silence. The plague men, perhaps. Or worse, the watchman. Searching for someone. Anyone. You curl tighter. Become smaller. Become nothing. The sound fades. For now. But sleep does not return. You wait. Counting your breath. 1, 2, 3. Morning comes late in winter. But not in sleep. You rise before the light. Again. Your mother is colder now. Her skin pale. Her lips dry. But she breathes. Still, you take that as a blessing. And step outside. The frost bites your feet. The ground is hard. Your breath puffs out in clouds. The animals are restless. The chicken has gone missing. No blood. Just gone. A fox, maybe. Or something worse. The baker swears he saw a figure last night. Tall, hooded, carrying something. No one believes him. But no one argues either. There is no law after sunset. Only shadows. You go to fetch water again. The stream is slower now, freezing around the edges. You kneel and look at your reflection. You barely recognize yourself. Your cheeks sunken, your eyes hollow. There's dirt beneath your nails, flecks of blood from a cut that never healed. You are 13, maybe, or 15. No one keeps exact count anymore. The years are marked by who lived and who didn't. You pass the edge of the woods, where the witch once lived. The hut is ash now, but the tree behind it still stands. A crow sits upon a branch. Watching you, you whisper a greeting, just in case. By the time you return, the village is awake. Smoke curls from a few roofs. Children chase a dog through the mud. Laughter, thin as mist, but real. You smile, faintly, because even here, somehow, some things remain. You step inside. Your mother opens her eyes. Just for a moment, you take her hand. And for the first time in days, she squeezes yours. Light creeps through the cracks in the wall. It is morning, and for now, you are still alive. But the night will return, and with it, the old fears. Because in the medieval world, the night was never safe. The sun rises behind a veil of clouds. It is not bright. It is not warm, but it is there. And in this world, even the faintest light is a kind of mercy. You rise. Your mother stirs and drinks a few sips of water. The herbs have dulled her fever, but they cannot cure what lives deeper inside. She smiles at you, just barely. You hold that smile in your chest. It may be the last. Outside, the village is quieter than usual, not because it's early, but because something has changed. A wagon stands in the square, a man in black beside it. The plague cart, covered in tattered cloth, carrying the silent ones. You count 3 bodies already. A child, a man, an old woman, covered in linen, sprinkled with ashes. You do not approach. You lower your gaze and keep walking. Today is a feast day, not for celebration, but obligation. Saints' Day. There will be a procession, hymns, incense, and fear. Everyone must attend, even the sick, if they can walk. You help your mother up, wrap her in layers of wool. She leans on you, her body small, brittle, like dried leaves. Together you walk slowly to the church. Inside, the air is thick. The priest's voice echoes. Latin verses flow like slow water. You understand none of it, but you listen anyway. Candles flicker along the stone walls. Their wax pools on the floor. A statue of a saint stares down with glass eyes. As you kneel, your knees press against cold stone. Your mother coughs once. People look. You feel their eyes, their suspicion. You know what they're thinking. But you do not care. You grip her hand, and you pray, not for a miracle, just for peace. Outside, the air is colder, the sky darker. You return home. You return home. She lies down and sleeps. You do not know if she will wake. The rest of the day is spent in chores, repairing a fence, chasing a goat back into its pen, fetching more water, always more water. You pass the well. Look down into its depths. You can't see the bottom, only your reflection, twisted by the ripples. For a moment, you wonder what would happen if you let go, dropped the bucket, walked away, but you don't, because you were born into this life, and there is no door out, only forward, one step at a time. That evening, the Lord's men arrive. They are armed. They do not speak to you. They post notices. A new tax, a new rule, a new punishment. Your neighbour speaks out. He calls it unfair. The men beat him with sticks. No trial, no chance. You drag his body from the mud. He groans, but he lives. For now, night again. You light a single candle. Its flame dances against the wall. You sit beside your mother. She opens her eyes, smiles, and closes them again. You whisper stories to her, of birds, of stars, of a world where no one goes hungry. You do not know if she hears, but the telling soothes you. Outside, an owl calls, then silence, the kind of silence that feels final. You lie beside her, close your eyes, and listen to the fire crackling low, to the wind at the shutters, to your own breath. You are alive, still. But the truth is simple. In this world, there are no promises, no guarantees, no mercy. Tomorrow is not a right. It is a chance, and you take it every day, because in the medieval world, you wouldn't last a day. But somehow, you just did. Let's begin the next reason for why you wouldn't last a day in medieval times. Guess what? Your clothes are itchy and alive. The tunic clings to your skin like an old memory, heavy, musty, and scratchy. Made from coarse wool, unlined, unwashed, and woven by hand long before you were born. This is your only shirt, and you'll wear it every day for weeks, maybe months. The itching begins before the sun is even up. A flick of your wrist, a shift of your shoulders, and still it rubs. The seams press against your ribs. The neckline scratches your throat. And the sleeves, they hold onto every speck of straw, dust, and crawling thing they've ever met. You reach for your belt. It's made of braided rope, rough, frayed. It's dug a groove into your waist. You feel it, even in sleep. And beneath your clothes, your underclothes, if you're lucky to have any, are little more than linen rags. They've been mended again and again, and again. Stiff from dried sweat, soaked once in the rain, never properly dried, and they never quite lost that smell. Now, let's pause for a moment. Imagine lying down after a long day in the fields. You don't change. You don't undress. You simply lie on the straw mattress, which itself has fleas. And the wool of your tunic? It holds them too. Little black specks crawling near the seams, biting at your neck. You scratch. You stop. You scratch again. It never ends. The candlelight fades, and the room grows cold. But your tunic, it doesn't warm you. It just holds in the dampness and the smell. In the morning, it will still smell of the animal it came from, and of you. But there's no other option. No closet, no laundry, no fresh pair for Sunday. This one garment is all you have, and every thread carries the story of your labour and your itch. You try to sleep, but your back itches, then your chest, then your leg, and beneath it all, you feel something move. When you rise with the dawn, stiff and sore, your clothes rise with you, not because you put them on, but because you never took them off. And outside, the air is misty, cold, but the wool is already warm with your body heat and yesterday's sweat. You scratch your arm again. A familiar friend, the bite of a flea. They say the fleas are everywhere, in your bed, in your socks, even in the nobleman's collar. Even kings scratch. But you just hope you don't bleed this time. This is the life of cloth in the medieval world. Alive, breathing, itching, crawling, and the day hasn't even truly begun. The morning air hangs thick with smoke from distant hearths, and you step outside. Your tunic, still damp from the sweat of yesterday's labor, catches the morning breeze. But the chill never fully reaches your skin, because the layer between your body and the world is no longer just cloth. It's grime, and it clings. Weeks of dust, fireside soot, grease from animals, and your own skin's oils soaked into the fibers, sealed in by time. Your tunic, your hose, your cloak, they no longer feel like separate garments. They are a second skin now, heavier, stiffer, alive in a way that makes you shudder if you think too long. You bend to gather firewood. Your knee cracks. Your hose stretched thin at the seam, splits slightly at the joint. You feel a breeze, but you won't mend it today, because thread is precious. Needles even more. You scratch again. Same spot. Every day, that spot. It's where the seam rubs your collarbone raw. You sometimes bleed there, and the blood stains dark, barely noticeable beneath the already brownish fabric. There's no color left in your clothes. Not really. Not after this long. Once, your tunic may have been a dull green, dyed with nettle leaves, perhaps. But the dye ran in rain, faded in sun. And now it's the color of the ground, and the dirt has claimed it as its own. You pass others on the path. A woman with a woven shawl, fraying at the edges. A man whose boots are held together with pigot thread. You nod. They nod. No one mentions the smell, because everyone smells. Like smoke, sweat, and wool that hasn't seen water in months. Water is precious, and reserved for drinking, not washing. Clothes, after all, dry slow, and wet clothes in cold air can kill. So you wear them, as they are, always. Even when lice creep up your back, even when you feel a spider scurry beneath your hem in the outhouse. Even when you see the neighbor boy scratching so furiously he draws blood and keeps walking. It is what it is. And still, the cloth holds on. It becomes more than clothing. It becomes identity. People know you by it. That patch on your elbow, the frayed neckline, the blackened knees from years of kneeling in the dirt. It knows your story, and it never lets you forget it. Tonight, you'll lie down again. In the same shirt, in the same hose, in the same smell, and again, the itching will come. And again, something will move. But you'll sleep eventually, because you always do, even when the dirt wears you, and not the other way round. The thread that wraps your body isn't just scratchy anymore. It's dangerous. Your shirt, once protection from the cold, is now a shelter, but not for you. For life. Tiny, crawling, biting life. Invisible life. Your tunic swarms, not in plain sight, but beneath the folds, in seams, in the fuzzy hollows near your waistband, and especially in the warm, damp places where the cloth sticks to your skin. They thrive there. The lice, irritant, fleas, mites, and things you have no name for, but you feel them, especially at night. The scratching never stops. It's not nerves. It's real. Your shoulder itches and you scratch. You lift the cloth, and a small red dot bleeds where the insect bit. Again, there are more every week. You know, because you've started picking them off, pressing them between fingernails. A soft crack. Then you toss the tiny corpse into the fire. But they come back, because your clothes are their world. Wool holds warmth. Linen holds moisture, and neither gets washed. Washing means boiling. Soap means lie, and soap stings open wounds. You've learnt that. So, like everyone else, you endure it. Because to strip the clothes from your back is to strip away safety, to risk sickness, or worse, the cold. But sometimes, the sickness comes anyway. One winter, a boy in your village began to cough. He coughed for days, then weeks, then he stopped. Then he stopped. Then he stopped, because he was gone. His blanket, never washed. His shirt, infested. And though no one spoke it aloud, everyone wondered, was it the bite of a flea? The filth in the collar? The crusted blood that had never been scrubbed? Could cloth Kill? You've seen others go too. A woman whose dress had turned black from grime, who grew a fever and never rose again. A man who itched so violently his skin broke open, and something infected the wound. No one trusts fabric. Not fully. Not anymore. So now, you're cautious. You leave your tunic near the fire at night to smoke out the bugs. You turn your hose inside out, hoping it might give your skin a break. But the smell remains. The heaviness remains. The memories remain. You sometimes dream of clean fabric, of soft linen that doesn't scratch, of soap that doesn't burn. But even dreams are dirty. And in the morning, you'll rise, put on the same clothes, breathe through your mouth, and carry on. Because even if your clothes are killing you slowly, you need them to survive. You stopped noticing the smell. At first it followed you like a curse. A sour, wet wool scent, part sweat, part mildew, part something else. Something older, deeper. People flinched when they walked past you. But now, no one flinches, because everyone smells the same. Your nose gave up, your brain adjusted, and now the scent of rot is comfort. It's strange what becomes normal. The itch, though, that never leaves. You scratch without thinking. You tug at your sleeves. You dig your nails into the crook of your elbow until the skin welts. You know the bugs are there, but you've made peace with them. Not out of love, out of exhaustion. Because fighting means energy, and you barely have enough to make it through the day. So the itch stays. A quiet rhythm, like a heartbeat, like the ticking of a clock that doesn't tell time, only discomfort. Your body has changed. The fabric no longer fits quite right. The collar rubs a patch raw on your neck. The trousers bunch at the knees and sag near the waist. One sleeve has torn. You stitched it back, but the thread was too coarse, so now it rubs worse than before. Still, you wear it, because to remove it is to be bare, and to be bare is to be seen. And to be seen feels dangerous. So you sit in silence, wrapped in a cocoon that scratches and bites, but also holds you like armor. Thin armor, stained armor, but armor still. You remember stories of nobility, silk, clean linens, perfumed gloves. You wonder if those stories are lies. Because in your world, fabric doesn't float. It weighs you down. It clings when wet. It chafes when dry. And sometimes, when the cold seeps in, it feels like ice pressed against your spine. And yet, you don't take it off. Even when you sleep. Even when the cloth stiffens with old sweat. Even when the seams dig into your ribs. Because the body can forget comfort. But the mind? It remembers shame. And to be unclothed is to feel exposed in ways worse than weather. There are moments, rare moments, when you brush against a clean rag, a fresh scrap, a new sleeve, and for 1 second, you feel a ghost of something. A touch that doesn't bite. A fabric that whispers, not screams. You close your eyes and pretend your whole body feels like that. Soft, safe, clean. But then you open your eyes and scratch the welt at your side, and tighten the crusted belt, and return to your place by the fire, because dreams don't keep out the cold. Clothes do, even the itchy ones. Some people carry scars on their skin. You carry them in your clothes. Every thread, a memory. Every stain, a story. And the fabric remembers everything. There's a brown patch near your left knee. Dried blood. Your blood. From a stumble in the forest years ago, when you were running from a sound you still can't describe. The tear was never mended. You just learned to walk around it. There's a faded mark on your shoulder. Grease, maybe. Or oil from a long-forgotten tool. You touched that spot once, and for a second remembered your father, bent over the same tools, wearing his own scratchy tunic, frowning, sweating, fixing what others broke. He didn't talk much. But he wore the same thing every day, just like you. And now, you wonder if he ever felt clean. The cloth has grown stiff in places, not from washing, wet, from weather, from sun, from time. There's salt at the seams from your tears, maybe. Or the sea air. Or both. Or both. And you run your fingers along the frayed collar, and it catches. Like your memory catches too. Not clear, not sharp, but there. The day your brother left. The fight you had. How he shoved you. And how your back hit the stone wall. And how your back hit the stone wall, leaving dust and pain behind. Your shirt tore that day. Hard, you patched it. But the line shows a crooked scar across your chest. You wear it still. Not because you want to remember, but because you forgot how to forget. The cloth doesn't judge. It just holds you. And you begin to believe that maybe it knows you better than anyone ever has. Because it stayed, when others didn't. It wrapped around you, when you shook from the cold, when the world turned its back, when your name meant less than your smell. It stayed. There's a hole near your side now. A new one. You don't remember when it appeared. Maybe last winter, or the winter before that. You used to fix holes. Now you just ignore them. Pretend they're vents. Places where your skin can finally breathe. The irony? You used to dream of new clothes. Clean. Soft. White. But now, if someone gave you a new tunic, you wouldn't know how to wear it. You'd miss the weight. The texture. The story. Because this cloth, this itchy, crawling, biting cloth, it has become your second skin. There are nights you think of shedding it all, burning the whole outfit, watching it curl in orange and black. You imagine the heat, the release, the freedom. But then you think, who would you be without it? You don't remember your body without this weight. You don't remember your shape beneath it. And that frightens you more than the fleas. So you tighten the belt, pull up the sleeves, and let the memory press closer. Because if the cloth remembers, maybe you don't have to. At first it was just clothing. A tunic. A tunic. Some leggings. A belt, worn for warmth. Or modesty. Or because it's what people do. But somewhere along the way, you stopped wearing it. And it started wearing you. You reach for the collar, and it moves before you touch it. You blink. Was that a trick of the dark? No. The fabric is awake. But it doesn't crawl anymore. It breathes. Slow. In rhythm with your chest. Not above your skin. Not on it. Inside it. They say the soul resides in the body. But maybe yours has leaked. Stitched into seams. Woven into fibers. Absorbed by every thread that's touched your sweat, your blood, your dreams. You think of all the nights you wore it, cried in it, ran in it, fell asleep in it, and never once asked what it wanted, until now. You pull at the sleeve, but it pulls back, gently, as if to say, we are the same now. You don't remove a part of yourself, and you believe it. You believe the cloth has a memory, a will, a name you never knew, but always felt. You stare into the dark, and see nothing, but you feel the fabric's gaze. It wraps tighter, not strangling, just claiming. There's no fear now. No fleas, no shame, no smell that doesn't already feel like home. People might see you in the street, and whisper, why doesn't he change? Why does he look like that? Why does he smell like that? But the cloth knows. It knows the weight you've carried, the nights you've survived, the losses you've worn like a second skin, and it stayed. So now, you stay with it, not because you have no choice, but because you've made peace with the itch, the smell, the shape you've become, because now you are not just in the clothes, and you are the clothes, and they will never forget you. What if I tell you that the toilet is anywhere? In the stillness of a dim medieval dawn, mist curls through cobbled alleyways, and the cold stones beneath your feet send a gentle shiver up your spine. A rooster crows somewhere beyond the haze, and the village begins to stir, slowly, begrudgingly. But before you think of breakfast or work, nature calls. You look around for privacy. There is none. The outhouse? If you're lucky, it's a shared wooden box out back with a hole cut into a plank. But more often, it's a chamber pot under the bed, emptied into the street. Or perhaps a trip to the edge of the town wall, where gravity and distance are your disposal tools. You step outside, holding your breath. The smell of refuse clings to the air like fog. Someone dumped theirs already. Perhaps hours ago, perhaps just minutes. A rivulet of waste slowly seeps down the side of the street, mingling with the mud and straw. You step around it carefully, your worn boots slick and stained from yesterday's walk. The wind shifts. You wish it hadn't. A castle servant further uphill pours a slosh of something foul from a window. You don't want to know what. But you do know what it is. Everyone does. Toilets, as you know them, do not exist here. The privy, if you had one, is dark and draughty, wooden. It smells like centuries of use. No plumbing, no privacy, no paper. Instead, there's moss. That, or rags. Or your hand, rinsed in a basin later, or not at all. And the thought lingers. What if you had to go? You light a candle. The shadows flicker. The chamber pot is there beside the bed. You squat quietly, praying no one hears the splash. You cover it with a piece of cloth. Maybe tomorrow you'll empty it, maybe not. This is the rhythm of release in medieval life. Silent, public, reeking, repeated, and if you think you can simply hold it, think again. Because your next meal, your next drink, your next ale, has likely been prepared within steps of that very same gutter. There is no escape, only flow. As you rise from your makeshift morning ritual, the scent follows you, not just on your clothes or your skin, but in the very air around you. The streets remain slick from the morning's waste. You step over puddles, eyes down, careful not to slip. Children run barefoot through it, laughing. Rats scurry along the edges, fat and fearless. You pass the bakery. Its warmth and scent should comfort you. But even here the odour creeps in. The wood-fired oven glows orange in the dim morning. Bread rising, crusts crackling. A small luxury in a world that rarely offers comfort. You take your loaf and continue on. Along the wall, a long channel. Stone-lined sloping carries waste slowly down toward the river. The same river you'll draw your water from later. The same river the animals drink from. The same river you'll bathe in when you can. And yet, there is rhythm to it. No one complains. Not openly. This is simply life. Children are taught early when to go, where to go, how to avoid being noticed. Behind the butcher's stall, a boy squats behind a barrel. He sees you, nods, no shame, no words, just the quiet understanding that this is how it's done. Further on, you see the monks. Even in the cloistered quiet of the abbey, there is no escape from the chamber pot. Monks wake in the middle of the night, shuffle silently to the corner of their cell, and return to prayer with the scent of waste beneath the stone. In wealthier homes, if you're ever lucky enough to enter one, things aren't so different. Perhaps the pot is porcelain, perhaps it's gilded with silver trim, but the contents are the same, and the disposal method. Often the same servant who cooks your food. Atop a castle wall, a knight leans over the edge, armor clinking, and relieves himself into the moat below. No one blinks. No one blinks. No one blinks on the Rupawed once in the hidden of Theftenthal, because when you live in a world without plumbing, modesty becomes an inconvenience. You cross the square. A girl is sweeping waste from a doorway with a bundle of twigs. She hums softly as she works. You step around her, nodding. The scent of her home lingers in the air. Even the grand cathedrals have no refuge. Behind stone pillars and tapestries, tucked into shadowed alcoves, chamber pots rest like strange little secrets. And beneath the pews, rats move silently, sniffing out crumbs and what was left behind. You finally reach your destination, a stable. The scent here, oddly, is less offensive. Horses have their own rhythm, their own waste, but theirs is expected, managed, piled into hay and dragged out in carts. You sit beside a warm flank, exhaling. The candlelight of morning has turned to a pale gold sun, but the scent of the street has followed you. Because in medieval life, there is no such thing as separation, no division between clean and unclean, sacred and soiled. There is only proximity, and you are always close. Always. And so, as the sun rises higher, warming the thatched rooftops and the fog melts into golden light, you find yourself venturing into the manor lands where privilege meets its own brand of discomfort. Here, in castles that loom like stone beasts on the hills. The nobles might live with more linen and lace, but their toilets are still a matter of buckets and walls. Garderobes, those precarious wooden chutes jutting from castle walls, seem like a strange architectural afterthought. Imagine sitting in a small, cold chamber high above the outer wall, with only a thin slab of wood separating you from open air, and an unfortunate drop. It may seem like luxury compared to the peasants' trenches, but the bitter draughts make every visit a numbing ordeal. Even in wealth there is no escape from the stench, for the noble halls reek of chamber pots left too long under ornate beds, and rushes on the floor collect more than just dirt. Scented herbs are sprinkled on the ground to mask it all, yet the musty weight of human existence clings to every surface. Back in the villages, children play near the ditches where waste flows freely, oblivious, laughing, splashing in puddles tainted by runoff. The line between clean and unclean blurs. Hygiene, as we know it, simply doesn't exist. When illness strikes, and it often does, blame isn't placed on germs. No, the people believe in bad air, evil spirits, or celestial punishments. Few bathe often. The church sometimes discourages it, warning that nakedness tempts sin. Water too can carry disease, so many prefer weak ale or mead for drinking, safer fermented and oddly nourishing. As the day continues and your footsteps carry you to the local abbey, you catch sight of the monks in their routines. Their lives are cloistered, quiet and full of rituals, but even here the toilet is a wooden seat above a running stream shared by all. Silent stone walls echo with the drip of water, the scrape of sandals, and the occasional cough. Evening falls gently once more. Candles flicker. The air grows still. And once again, nature calls. In the calm darkness, you crouch behind a hedge or step into a privy that leans to one side, its wooden door hanging slightly ajar. There is no flush, no privacy, just you, the stars above, and the deeply humbling realities of medieval life. The chill of twilight settles across the landscape like a shroud. Lanterns flicker behind shuttered windows, and in the darkened corners of every town and hamlet, you'll find something both universal and unspoken, the nighttime ritual of dealing with waste. For most households, there is no leaving the house at this hour. The streets aren't safe, and the thought of stumbling over uneven cobbles or encountering a stray thief or wild dog keeps most people indoors. Instead, the chamber pot comes into play. A humble bowl of ceramic or wood, it rests beneath the bed or beside the hearth, waiting patiently. It's used by everyone, man, woman, child, often shared by entire families. But there's a dilemma. By morning, the pot is full, and someone, often the youngest or the lowest-ranking member of the household, must carry it outside, sloshing and slopping with every step to empty it into a communal cesspit or stream. The smell is overwhelming, the task humbling, and yet this is just life. In cities, a new problem emerges. Density. More people means more waste. And in places like medieval London or Paris, that waste builds fast. Open sewers, called kennels, line the middle of the street. Waste flows visibly and constantly. When it rains, the filth mixes and rushes faster. When it's dry, it bakes in the sun and clings to the soles of your shoes. And then there are the gong farmers. These are the unsung heroes or martyrs of sanitation. Paid to empty cesspits and latrines, they descend into the foul darkness with shovels and buckets, often working at night. The job is revolting and dangerous. Gases build in these pits, and deaths from asphyxiation aren't uncommon. Yet for some, the pay is worth it. Meanwhile, those who live near the Thames or any major river often just toss their waste in. Out the window it goes, sometimes with a shouted warning, "Gardy-loo." In the best case scenario, it lands in the river and floats away. In the worst case, someone's walking by below. And yet through all this, life continues. Children grow up knowing no different. The elderly reflect on the same routines they've practiced for decades. Waste is just a part of life, managed not with plumbing or porcelain but with grit and tolerance. By now, the idea of a modern bathroom might feel like a miracle. But in the medieval world, it's simply unimaginable. No one's dreaming of flushing toilets. They haven't even been invented. What exists is practical, shared and raw. And so, as midnight approaches, the village quiets. A dog barks in the distance. A door creaks open. Somewhere, someone empties a pot into the night, watching the stars above and the dirt below. Because in the medieval world, the toilet truly is anywhere. Dawn breaks once more across a world without privacy, plumbing, or porcelain. The air carries a quiet dampness, wood smoke drifts from chimneys, and already the rituals begin again. The chamber pots are emptied, the streets slowly fill with bodies, boots, and the collective echo of footsteps on cobblestone. Some head to the fields, as always. Nature's wide open spaces are both blessing and curse. There is fresh air, yes, but no protection from wind, rain, or curious eyes. Squatting in a field is normal, so normal in fact that few would even comment if they passed by and saw it. Others head to the communal latrines. In towns, these might be simple wooden huts built above cesspits. No flushing, of course, just gravity and time. They're crowded, noisy, and rarely cleaned, and the stench always lingers. But this is where people talk, trade gossip, exchange news, laugh, cough, groan. A medieval bathroom is not a place of silence. Yet in castles and monasteries, things look different. Here the garderobe stands high above the moat or a shaft. It's a seat, stone or wood with a hole, perched above open space. Some are simple, others have chutes that drop waste straight into the running water below. In winter they're freezing, in summer swarmed with flies, but to the elite they're a luxury. And still, for most people, farmers, blacksmiths, bakers, brewers, the day unfolds without a proper bathroom break. They go when they can, where they can, behind barns, by rivers, in corners. This was a world without boundaries, without flushes, and without shame. Toilet paper. No such thing. Leaves, moss, straw, rags, or if you were lucky, wool cloth scraps. In wealthy homes, soft fabric might be set aside for wiping. In others, well, one learned to improvise. Children grow up watching this, learning how to wipe with stones or grass, learning when it's safe to relieve yourself outside, and when to wait. It's part of life's rhythm. No fanfare, no hesitation, just survival. And the smells? Always there. Sewage blends with livestock, sweat and fire smoke to create a permanent medieval perfume, one you can never quite escape. It clings to clothes, homes, even church halls. But the body adapts. Noses grow numb. People stop noticing. What seems unthinkable today was simply background noise then. And as the day goes on, the story repeats. Pot by pot, pit by pit, field by field. Because in the Middle Ages, there was no single place to go. No flush, no sink, no private door with a lock. Just the wide world and your own tolerance. And yet amid the filth, there was life. Children played, markets thrived, people laughed, the world moved on. Because even when the toilet is anywhere, life is everywhere. You know what? The breakfast in the past might kill you. The faint light of dawn creeps through the cracks in your thatched roof. You wake, not to the scent of coffee or the comfort of a clean kitchen, but to the musty aroma of damp straw and stale air. Your stomach grumbles, but there's no guarantee that what awaits you will satisfy hunger or safety. In medieval times, breakfast was less a meal and more an afterthought. For many, especially peasants, eating in the morning wasn't a given. You might simply rise, stretch, and begin your work with nothing in your belly but the remnants of yesterday's weak pottage. But on days when food is available, the menu is unforgiving. Your bread course, blackened with soot from a smoky oven, is often laced with ergot, a toxic mold that grows on rye. You wouldn't know it by sight, it's baked right in. And it doesn't just make you ill, it causes convulsions, hallucinations, even death. The church might say you're possessed, but it was breakfast that cursed you. You reach for a chunk of cheese, days old, slightly crusted. If it smells strong, that's considered normal, but if it crawls, you're not lucky. Worms in dairy? Common. Cheese and milk were rarely fresh. They were stored in clay pots, exposed to heat, dirt and flies. Maybe you're thirsting for water. You'd better think twice. Water from wells and rivers is far from clean. Animal waste, human waste, even corpses might drift unseen just upstream. Many avoid it altogether and drink ale instead. But even ale is weak and sometimes brewed with spoiled grain. You sit on a wooden stool, if you have one. Likely it's just the floor. You chew slowly, not out of mindfulness but caution. Every bite is a gamble. There's no food safety regulation, no refrigeration, and no knowledge of bacteria. Illness isn't a surprise. It's an expectation. Children are already outside chasing chickens. A neighbour vomits near the dung pile. blamed on a bad wind. In truth, it was the breakfast she shared with you just yesterday. There is no golden toast, no eggs sizzling in butter, no fruit bowl, just survival. And even that is uncertain. But somehow, this is life. And day after day, they rise, eat what they can, and press on. You step outside into the crisp morning. The dew glistens on the grass, but beneath its beauty, dangers lurk, just as they do in your breakfast bowl. Yesterday's bread is still in your satchel. It's tough, nearly stone. Yet, it might be your only meal until dusk. If you're lucky, your household has a scrap of salted pork left from the last market visit. But more often it's gruel again, made from barley or oats, boiled in water that you hope was clean. The gruel might be thin, it might be thick, it might taste of ash if cooked over yesterday's dying coals. You eat it slowly, more to calm your belly than to enjoy it. But even this bland bowl can be deadly. Rats chew through grain sacks. They leave droppings, no one sees, no one checks. You eat, and you fall sick. You wonder how long that ache in your stomach has been there. A day? A week? You don't know. Everyone seems to have one. It's called the wasting, and it takes the young first. As you walk toward the field or forge or the market road, the village is already murmuring about who died in the night. She was fine yesterday, they say. Must have been the bread, or the milk, or the meat. Some refuse to eat before noon, fasting more out of fear than faith. Others eat whatever they find, roots, spoiled apples, stale pies that smell like vinegar. The fear is not in hunger. The fear is in eating. And the worst part? You never really know what it was that killed them. And so the morning continues, slow and grey. Your stomach twists, not from hunger, but from anticipation. You wonder if the bread you ate last night is the reason your head throbs and your fingers tingle slightly. Ergot isn't just some foul-tasting mould. It's a silent poison. It doesn't warn you before it works its way into your bloodstream, making your limbs feel like they no longer belong to you. People in your village say it can drive you mad, make you see things in the mist, shadows that laugh, walls that bleed, and sometimes you believe them. But that's not the only danger hiding in your breakfast. You spot a jug of milk sitting by the fire. It's been there since yesterday. Still warm, still white. But inside, worms may be swimming, too small to see unless the sunlight catches them just right. And by now, the jug's neck smells faintly sour. You drink anyway, because there's no alternative. You try not to think of what your neighbour said, that her little boy drank spoiled milk and hasn't stopped vomiting since. You shrug it off. What choice do you have? Water? That's a death sentence in itself. The well may look clean, but rats scurry along the rim at night. Dead frogs have been found floating at the bottom, and more than one person in town has keeled over after a glass. The river nearby is worse. Soapy rags, rotting food, blood from the butcher's stall up the hill. It all flows into the same brown stream. If you're lucky, you get ale. Not strong ale, you can't afford that. But weak beer, fermented just enough to kill some of the parasites. Children drink it too. Not because they like it, but because their parents know what water does to little bodies. Your stomach groans again. Not just from what you've consumed, but from what you haven't. Breakfast is often skipped. Not out of choice, but out of necessity. The crops last season were poor. The grain cellar looks emptier each day. If the Lord takes another portion in tax, you might be chewing on tree bark come winter. And so you rise from your stool. Breath foul. Lips cracked. You sling a worn cloth across your shoulder and make your way outside. The wind smells of smoke and pig dung. There's a line forming outside the baker's shed. He might still have bread if the rats haven't beaten you to it. A low grunt escapes your lips as you join the line, eyes downcast, shoes soaked from dew. The sun is climbing now, weak and pale, but it doesn't warm you. And as you wait, your mind drifts. What if breakfast was safe? What if water didn't need to be feared? What if eating wasn't a daily gamble? But you shake the thoughts away. It's better not to dream, because here in medieval life dreams don't fill your belly, and breakfast might just be the last thing you ever eat. The breadline inches forward, but it moves slower than your thoughts. You hear the whispers. They say Thomas the Cooper coughed blood after eating yesterday's barley. Someone found a finger in the stew pot behind the inn. Your feet are tired already. Not from the walk, but from the weight. You glance at the baker's door, still closed. A dog whimpers nearby, chewing something too dark to identify. You hope it's not meat, because if it is, someone's missing it. Your stomach lurches. The ache is dull but persistent. A hunger that isn't just about food, it's survival. It's a question, will this meal heal me or finish me? Finally, the wooden door creaks open. The baker's wife stands behind it, sleeves covered in flour, her eyes rimmed red from smoke and lack of sleep. A few loaves are passed out. Small, hard, nearly burnt. They smell slightly off, but no one complains. When it's your turn, she hesitates. She recognizes your face. You haven't paid for yesterday's, she says flatly. You fumble in your pouch. 1 copper. It isn't enough. But she looks at your cracked lips and the dull light in your eyes, and hands you half a loaf anyway. Gratitude doesn't have words in this world, just nods and silence. You take it and walk back home. Inside, the room is colder than it was before. Your mother is asleep on the floor, or perhaps passed out. Her breathing is shallow, her fingers curled tightly around a cloth bundle, probably the last of the dried peas. You don't disturb her. You break the bread in half. The crust tears unevenly. There's something dark near the center, possibly a burnt seed, or something worse. You eat it anyway. Each bite is dry, chalky, but you chew slowly, so your stomach doesn't rebel. You've heard stories of children collapsing after eating too fast, too eagerly. Their bodies couldn't handle the shock. You think about that boy, the one who stole an apple last week, caught, hands tied, left in the square as a warning. The birds got to him before the guards did. Still chewing, you stare at your hands, nails chipped, palms lined with dirt and old cuts. Breakfast is not a ritual here, it's warfare. And every morning you wonder which part of you will lose. A loud cough shakes your attention. Outside your window, the tanner is burning hides again. The smoke seeps through the cracks in the wall. You wrap your cloak tighter and try to finish what's left of the loaf. But then your tongue catches something soft. Too soft. You pause, spit it into your palm. A worm. Alive. Wriggling. And that's when it hits you. This morning wasn't your worst. There's still time for that. The baker's line moves slowly. You shift your weight from one aching foot to the other, watching the smoke curl from his chimney. The scent of charred grain teases your senses, warm, bitter, and just shy of comforting. But you know the truth. That smell means the bread burned again. He's using last year's flour, maybe older, musty, damp, full of insects. But you'll take it. You always do. Your turn comes. He doesn't speak, just hands you a small lump, darker than it should be. The crust as hard as a stone. It's warm at least. You tear off a piece and chew. It crunches, not because it's fresh, but because a tiny pebble or two got ground in with the flour. You feel it scrape your teeth. But still, you eat. Behind you, a small child coughs. Deep, rattling, the baker glares. Out with that one, he mutters. Illness spreads fast, especially here, in the cold shadow of stone walls and narrow alleys. The plague is always one careless cough away. You keep walking. Down the lane, you pass the butcher's shop. Flies circle above the hanging slabs, buzzing in lazy spirals. The meat is dark at the edges, curling slightly, like it's trying to shrink away from the sunlight. You pause, wondering if a bit of fat might help stretch your breakfast. You can't afford it. Instead, you glance toward the garden behind the monastery. That's where the monks grow herbs, feverfew, garlic, nettles. You've heard garlic can keep you healthy, but the brothers don't share. Not with commoners. Still, sometimes, if you wait until dusk, you might find wilted leaves on the compost heap. You make a note to return later. The sun has climbed a bit higher now, but with it comes the heat, and with the heat, the smell. Rotten vegetables, human waste, sweat and mold. It clings to your nose, sour and metallic. Your bread sticks in your throat. You reach for a sip of water from the leather flask at your belt, hesitating. Is it worth the risk? You drink anyway. Your lips twitch with the taste of leather, and something else, something faintly rotten, a memory of fish. You grimace and wipe your mouth, better sick than parched. A bell rings faintly in the distance mid-morning. The town begins to stir in full. Merchants drag carts, Hens cluck from cages, a stray dog limps across the mud-covered square, and in the distance the church bells call out for prayer. But prayer doesn't stop mold, or disease, or famine. You think about your family. Your brother has been coughing too. Your sister hasn't left her bed in 2 days. The priest says it's a trial, that suffering purifies the soul. But all it purifies is the graveyard. You press on. Your chores await, and your belly groans once more. Not with hunger this time, but warning. Something you ate or drank twists inside you. A slow churn. You try to ignore it, but the dull nausea lingers. The town's healer once told you that bad bread can rot your stomach from the inside, that it can drive you to madness. You didn't believe him. Until you watched your neighbor scream at the sky for 3 days straight, eyes bloodshot, fingers clawing at nothing. They buried him with his mouth still open. The baker's bread didn't look much different that day either. So you walk faster. Past the merchant carts, past the crying baby at the tavern door, past the stench of spoiled onions and old hay. Because the day is still young. And if you're not careful, lunch might kill you too. The thought follows you like a shadow. Your gut still churns from the bread. An invisible fire smoulders behind your ribs. But there's no turning back. The day presses on, relentless. Your tasks won't wait, and neither will hunger. You head toward the fields. Out here, beyond the city's broken walls, the air smells different, fresher, but only just. The wind carries whispers of dung and wet grass. Chickens scratch the dirt near the huts. A shepherd boy leans on his stick, eyes heavy with sleep. Your hands find work, tilling, chopping, tying bundles. Every motion wears at you. Sweat crawls down your neck, mixing with grime. But with each shovel, each bundle, your mind drifts to food. Not the kind you have, the kind you wish you did. You remember a festival once, years ago. Warm pies with golden crusts, thick stews, honeyed wine. Your mother's hands breaking the bread before anyone touched it. Clean hands, safe hands. But now? Now the village cook reuses the same pot every day, barely scrubbing it. The stew soaks in everything, dirt, bugs, scraps of meat turned grey. One wrong batch, one rotten onion, and a dozen villagers fall ill. The fever rolls in with the dusk, takes them in their sleep. And still, you eat. What choice do you have? Your stomach roars again. That bitter taste creeps up the back of your throat. You wipe your mouth. Just keep moving. By noon, you return to town. The bell tower groans, and traders cry out, goat cheese, fresh curds, beans, lentils, get 'em before they sprout. You pause near the fishmonger. A woman with salt-cracked fingers slaps a trout on the slab. Its eye stares at you, cloudy. The flesh is limp, its belly torn where worms once lived. She douses it with vinegar, hoping to mask the smell. You keep walking. At the tavern door, a man stirs a cauldron the colour of ash. Stew for a penny, he calls. You hesitate. A penny is all you have, but you're desperate. Inside, the room is dim, choked with wood smoke. You sit, bowl in hand. The thin broth swirls with cabbage stems, a lump of meat too soft to name, and bits of bone that catch between your teeth. One spoonful, then another. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself people survived worse. Worse, and then the shivering starts. The cold sweat beads along your spine. Your hands tremble as you grip the wooden spoon. Something's not right. Your eyes scan the tavern, others slurping, laughing, fine for now. But you know your body, and this isn't just hunger anymore. You push the bowl away. Too late? You stumble out into the street, dry heaving. A priest watches silently from the corner, eyes narrowed, like he's seen this before. Because he has. It's the same sickness that took old Martha last week. She said she only ate a spoonful of porridge. Said the milk tasted odd, like metal. 2 days later, she stopped speaking. 3 days later, they found her still, stiff, eyes wide open. You swear you'll eat better tomorrow. But what is better? When everything around you is poisoned. Milk with worms. Bread with mold. Cheese that smells like feet and not the good kind. Even water betrays you. A child drowned last week after drinking from the well. Not from the water itself, but from the illness it carried. A sickness that swells the belly and shrivels the soul. So you make a choice. Today, you eat little. Just enough. Because in this world, to starve is slow, to feast is faster, and somewhere behind your ribs, the churn continues. But there's work to be done before nightfall. You press on, one foot dragging the other, hoping you'll still wake up tomorrow. If dinner doesn't kill you first, the day ends how it began, hungry, tired, and unsure if you'll survive the night. The sun bleeds into the horizon, leaving behind streaks of orange and ash. The village slows, chickens roost, doors creak shut, smoke rises from chimneys, curling like old ghosts in the cooling sky. You sit on a rock just outside your hut, watching. Your stomach groans, but quieter now. Less a cry for food, more a plea for mercy. Inside, your evening meal waits. A crust of barley bread, yesterday's stew scraped into a corner of a cracked clay bowl, and a sliver of hard cheese curled at the edge like it's trying to escape. You stare at it all. You remember what the priest once said. Only two kinds of people survive here. Those who trust no food, and those too poor to choose. You are the second. Still, you sniff the stew. Sour, metallic. You dip your finger in. Oily, cold. You tilt it toward your mouth and stop. Because you've seen too much. A boy down the road dead from eating spoiled pigeon. A nobleman's daughter sick for days from honey cut with wax and ash. Even the town guard, broad as an ox, now walks with a limp after chewing rancid boar meat on a dare. And just last week, your neighbour Tomas. He'd said, laughing, "I boiled it twice, it's fine." He was buried before Sunday. You wrap the bread in cloth and hide it in a corner. Maybe tomorrow it won't be as dangerous. Maybe. You lie down on the straw mat, body aching, lips cracked, bones sore. You think about food constantly. But now it haunts you. The idea that every bite could be your last is more terrifying than going to bed hungry. You'd rather hear your stomach wail than feel it twist in pain from a spoiled feast. Outside, someone coughs. Harsh, wet, repeated. Another neighbour falling to the night's hidden plague. You roll to your side. You try to sleep. But hunger is noisy. And so is fear. Your dreams are strange. Thick breads rising and collapsing. Apples filled with worms, rivers of red wine turning black. You wake in sweat, gasping. The moon is high. The stew still sits in the bowl, untouched. You rise, knees crack. You drink a little water, just a sip. You pray it's from the clean bucket. The hut is silent, except for your heartbeat. You think back to childhood. Your father would laugh and say, "Eat well, boy. One day you'll miss even the worst bread." He was right. He was right. He died from bad bread. So tonight, you don't eat. Not because you aren't hungry, but because you're tired of gambling with your life. You lie back down, weak, empty but alive. For now, in this time, this place. Food wasn't pleasure. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even fuel. It was a threat. And every single day, you risked your life to stay alive. You close your eyes, hands over your stomach, and whisper a prayer to no one. Let me wake up. Just one more morning. Sleep comes slowly, but it comes. Because if breakfast doesn't kill you, something else just might. The fire has been burning since dawn. You lie on the floor of a one-room cottage, pressed between damp straw and the low rumble of embers. The smoke seeps into your eyes, your lungs, your very thoughts. This is home. And the air here, it does not kiss your skin or fill you with life. It chokes. There is no chimney. There are no windows, only a thatched roof that sags slightly in the middle, and low walls that drink in the cold and spit out damp. Your mother tends the hearth, bent-backed, hair tied in a fraying cloth. She stirs the pot above the flames with a long wooden spoon. Every motion sends a puff of smoke curling toward the ceiling, or what little of it can be seen. Above you, dark stains mark the beams like ghosts burned into the wood, generations of soot, generations of breath. You cough. Everyone coughs. It is the morning chorus. A rough bark from your father, a wet gasp from your baby sister, a wheeze from your grandmother, who hasn't left her mat in 2 days. Smoke lives in your home like a permanent guest. You breathe it as you eat. You breathe it as you sleep. You breathe it when you cry. and no one thinks to stop it. Because this is how it has always been. Outside, the air is cold but clean, crisp, silent, but there is no escaping to it. The cold would kill you faster than the smoke, and besides, you are needed here inside. The pot bubbles, onions and cabbage maybe, hard to tell. The smoke makes everything taste the same. There is no ventilation, no chimney hole, only a small gap in the roof where the smoke trickles out like a whisper. You stand, finally, and make your way to the corner. Your hands find the wall, rough and cool. You press your face to the wooden cracks, just hoping to catch a single clean breath. Your lungs feel tight, always tight. Your eyes sting, always sting. And your head, heavy, fogged. A weight you carry all day. This is not sickness. This is simply air. Air that lives with fire. Air that shares your meals. Mute air that sits beside you like a silent reaper, waiting patiently. And you wonder quietly, in the back of your soot-stained thoughts. How many lives has this fire taken? Not with flames, but with breath. You blink slowly, eyes sticky from the smoke. Above you, the beams shift in your vision, dark and glistening, like the ribs of some sleeping beast. The blackness there is not just shadow, it is tar, grease, soot, caked thick enough to flake when disturbed. That ceiling has witnessed everything. Every meal, every scream, every birth, and every last breath. It sags with time, not from age alone, but from the constant embrace of smoke. Year after year, the fire feeds it, coats it, until the wood itself seems more soot than timber. You reach up once, long ago, curious. Your fingers came back black. The taste of ash clung to your tongue for days. Your grandmother once told you, never sleep with your mouth open. The soot will settle in your throat. You thought she was joking. Then your cousin, 5 years old, woke one morning unable to breathe. He'd been coughing for days. Now he couldn't stop. Every inhale a rattle, every exhale a cry. There were no doctors here, just a neighbour with old herbs and a prayer. He didn't make it to sunrise. And still, the fire burned. What choice was there? This fire boiled your water, dried your soaked boots, brought life to your meals and warmth to your bones. The fire was family, but its gift came with a price. Your lungs grew used to the burn. It no longer made you flinch, just ache. A quiet ache, deep in the chest, like a stone wrapped in cotton. Your mother's hands are cracked, her nails always grey. From smoke, from ash, from living too close to flame. She wipes her nose with her sleeve and hums an old tune, one passed down through generations, like the cough, like the black ceiling. Even the children have learned to speak in low, hoarse voices, as though the house itself doesn't allow shouting. And above all of you, the ceiling watches. If it could speak, you wonder, would it scream or simply sigh? When the wind outside howls, the smoke thickens, refusing to rise. It hugs the floor instead, forcing you lower, down to its level. The cat curls near the hearth, wheezing in its sleep. You once asked your father why the house had no chimney. He stared into the fire and muttered, because a hole lets in more than it lets out. And that was the end of it. Some families have holes in the ceiling, some don't. Yours doesn't. And so the smoke stays. Every breath you take carries the memory of every fire before. It's inside you now, etched in your ribs, lining your throat. You step outside briefly that afternoon, just a moment. The cold slaps your cheeks, makes your nose run. But the air is like ice wrapped in silk. Clean, empty. You fill your lungs and cough again. Your body doesn't remember how to breathe purity. And even as the wind bites, you long to stay. But duty pulls you back. The stew needs watching. The floor needs sweeping. And the fire needs sweeping. And the fire must never die. You return indoors. The smoke greets you like an old friend. And above, the ceiling accepts your presence once again. It will outlive all of you, one layer of soot at a time. We begin again at dawn. The fire is slow to start today. The kindling is damp. Your father curses under his breath as he leans in close, cheeks puffed, eyes squinting through rising wisps of smoke. It's always the hardest in winter. Wood is scarce, dry wood even scarcer. and the house feels colder than usual this year. There is no chimney. Not here, not anywhere nearby. It's strange to think that the thing you're missing, the one invention that might have changed everything, has already been created. Chimneys exist, but not for people like you. Not yet. You live in the long middle, a forgotten century between discovery and adoption, when knowledge stays in castles and books, not in cottages and kitchens. This is the chimneyless century. You can picture it. Some distant noble's house, with its tall brick stack reaching toward the sky like a monument. A pipe for the smoke, a passage for the air. But in your world, the fire must stay in the center of the room. Open, exposed, shared. The hearth is the heart. Meals are cooked there, stories told there, births, deaths, and decisions all by the fire. And with every breath, you trade health for heat. Your grandmother tells stories of a village that tried something different. They built holes in the roof, she says. Thought they were clever, but the rain came through, ruined everything. And so the old ways remained. Better a smoky house than a wet one. Better coughing than freezing. That was the logic. And so an entire century passed, covered in soot. Mothers coughing through childbirth. Fathers spitting dark phlegm by the fire. Children with black ringed eyes and shallow breaths. They called it the indoor fog. Some whispered of the black lung. Others just called it the cough. There were no words for pollution. No understanding of carbon or particles or poisoning. Only symptoms. And silence. Because what could you do? A chimney was as distant as the stars. So you swept the floor. You cleaned the pots. You wiped your face with a damp rag. But the air, it remained. Hot, heavy, oily with smoke. And the ceiling above you, ever darker. You wonder if this century will end. If one day, your children's children will breathe without pain. But for now, you press a cloth to your mouth, squint toward the windowless wall, and begin your day, because survival does not wait for clean air. It only asks that you breathe, whatever the cost. The smoke is everywhere now. It doesn't rise in a neat little trail like you might imagine. Instead, it sinks and swirls in the air around you, heavy, grey, and alive. It clings to the straw roof, seeps into your clothes, and coats your throat with every shallow breath. You sit inside your cottage, not because it's warm, but because it's the only place you have. Outside, it's raining again, cold and relentless. And there's work tomorrow, always work. The fire, your only source of heat and light, burns low in the hearth. There is no chimney here, just a hole in the thatched roof that may or may not do its job. The smoke has nowhere to go, so it stays. It fills the room, slowly, like a creeping fog. Your eyes sting, but you're used to it now. Everyone is. Your chest tightens slightly as you cough. It's not just a little smoke. It's the kind of air that blackens the walls, clogs the lungs, and leaves children wheezing before they can even speak. You're not alone. Families across the village breathe the same poison, day after day, year after year. In larger towns, the problem is worse. More fires, more people. The smoke thickens in the narrow alleyways curling between buildings, trapped by the towering timber frames. You step outside and find no relief. The fog, laced with soot, dung, and the reek of tanneries, hangs low. It crawls through the streets like a living thing. They call it God's breath, some say. Others whisper of curses or punishment. But most just live with it. What else can they do? And the consequences go far beyond a cough. Smoke inhalation is a slow killer. It inflames the lungs. It shortens the breath. And when illness comes, whether it be plague, consumption, or something nameless, the poisoned air weakens the body's will to fight. Even the healers don't understand it. They blame humors, or demons, or stars. They don't know the firewood is stealing life, one breath at a time. As evening falls, the indoor haze thickens. You try to rest, but your chest is heavy. You're lying beneath beams blackened by decades of smoke, surrounded by walls that never truly breathe. Your dreams are foggy, filled with shapes that shift and vanish in the mist. The fire crackles faintly beside you. Warmth, yes, but at a cost, because every spark comes with its price. And tomorrow, you'll breathe it all again. The fire burned low through the night, with not enough to warm you, but just enough to keep the frost from biting too deep. You rise before the sun, coughing again. It's a dry, scratchy sound, one that echoes through the wooden beams of the cottage, matching the morning silence. There's no rush. The day will unfold slowly, like smoke through rafters. You glance up. The ceiling is coated in black, a patchwork of soot stains and spider webs. You've never known it to be clean. The air smells of damp ash and old wool. It always has. But today your lungs feel heavier. The smoke lingers. Not just in the air, but in your body. You feel it behind your eyes, in the back of your throat, deep inside your chest. Your breathing is shallow. You've grown used to it. Everyone has. No one calls it sickness. Not yet. It's just life. Children wake up with red eyes. Mothers hush their cries and rub their backs. The old ones wheeze in the corners. And in every home, a fire burns beneath a ceiling that was never meant to trap the sky. You step outside again. The street is quiet. Fog and smoke hang together like a curtain over the world. The buildings loom close, their roofs low and sagging. Chimneys, where they exist, struggle to pull the smoke upward. Most simply push it sideways into windows, into nostrils, into lungs. A cart rattles by, pulled by a tired horse with soot-covered flanks. Its breath steams in the chilled morning air, mixing with the haze. A woman opens her shutters and coughs into the street. Another hangs laundry that will smell of smoke before it dries. This is the indoor fog. It is not bound by walls. It travels with people, clings to their hair, settles on their skin. Even the churches, sacred and silent, are not spared. The air inside them swirls with incense and coal smoke, staining stone angels black and dimming stained glass windows. In towns, the fog is so thick it obscures time. Morning blends into midday. Evening arrives unnoticed. And in castles, even among the highborn, the air is no cleaner. Their grand halls may be larger, but their fires are greater too. Tapestries trap the haze. Torches flicker against damp stone. Even the nobility coughs behind closed doors. No class escapes the breath of burning wood. And yet, life continues. Because what choice is there? You cook over fire. You wash in smoke. You dream in soot. It's the air of your ancestors. The price of warmth. The quiet killer no one dares name. And as the day drifts onward, the fog remains. It thickens in the corners. It settles in the lungs. And it waits for night to fall again. Night returns without drama. The sky darkens behind clouds already heavy with smoke. There are no stars, no moonlight, only a dim greyness, the same shade that lingers on your walls, your skin, your breath. You close the door behind you. Inside, the fire is low again. It always is. There's never enough fuel to keep it burning bright for long. And even if you had more, would you burn it? Each ember is warmth, but also ash. Each flame is comfort, but also cost. You lower yourself to the floor, to the straw-stuffed mat that has held your weight for many years. It's not soft, but it's familiar. It creaks the same way the floorboards do. It smells like the air, damp, woody, faintly acidic. Your chest tightens. A slow inhale. You feel it travel the same paths the smoke follows. Through the nose, down the throat, into the lungs. It brings no ease, just weight. Just the awareness of what you've breathed today, and every day before it. There are no alarms, no doctors, no science, only a quiet knowing, passed down from parent to child, that coughs don't go away, that chests grow heavier with time, that breathing, once effortless, becomes a labour. The air itself was not made to poison, but fires were not meant to live indoors, and when the two collide in thousands of homes, over hundreds of years, the air becomes a slow creeping thief. It takes little by little, first clarity, then ease, then laughter, then life. But still, you breathe, because it is all you know. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will bring clearer skies. You close your eyes. Your dreams are faint and flickering, like the final glow of coals on a stone hearth. In them the air is clean. Trees sway in winds untainted. A child runs without coughing. A mother sings without wheezing. A world exists where breath is free, not borrowed. And somewhere, in the distance, a door opens. Not to let someone out, but to let the air in. The truth is, you have to work. No matter what. The world is dark. Not the quiet dark of a modern bedroom, but a living, breathing dark. one filled with wind pushing through wooden shutters, with distant animal groans from a barn just beyond the crooked door, with the low creak of beams above your head, moaning softly in the cold. You're lying on straw. Rough, damp, bits of old hay scratch at your neck and back. You shift, but there's nowhere to shift to. Just the floor, just the cold, just the ache in your joints that never really goes away. Your eyes blink slowly. It isn't morning. Not yet, but it's coming. The rooster hasn't crowed, but your body knows. It always knows, because today, like yesterday, and the day before it, and every day for as long as you can remember, you must work or die. There are no clocks, no alarms, just rhythm. The rhythm of seasons, of obligation, of survival. You sit up slowly, wrapping a coarse linen shirt around your shoulders. It's stiff, unwashed, but warm in its own way. The soles of your feet hit the frozen dirt floor. You exhale. The air is visible. A puff of fog that disappears before it can mean anything. Outside, the wind whistles through the gaps in the wooden walls, the barn roof, the space beneath the door. It's always there, reminding you that winter bites and spring takes its time. You light a tallow candle. It flickers wildly, as if protesting. Its scent is heavy, animal-like. You're used to it. Everything smells. The animals, the smoke, the filth, even you. Your wife stirs. She doesn't speak. She knows the rhythm too. One of the children whimpers, then turns over, clutching a small doll made from old rags and straw. You step outside. Your boots crunch over frost-bitten mud. A thin mist hugs the ground like a forgotten blanket. Somewhere beyond the tree line, wolves still move before dawn. You reach for the hoe, the spade, the broken-handle rake. The tools aren't tools. They're lifelines. They're the difference between a bit of bread or none. A long sigh leaves your chest. Not because you are tired, though you are, but because your day has already begun, and it has not even begun yet. You walk to the field. The sun hasn't risen, but you dig. You chop, you sow. You clear stones from land you don't own. Land that feeds someone else. Land that decides whether you'll eat or beg. The frost clings to the edges of your sleeves. Your breath hangs in the cold. Still, you work. There is no choice. Work or die. The light comes slowly. Not all at once, but creeping, inching, dragging itself across the grey horizon like a tired soldier returning from war. The sky turns from ink into ash, to the faintest silver. The rooster finally crows. But you've already been working, for nearly an hour. There's no time to stop. No time to admire the morning mist resting softly on the furrows of soil. No time to reflect, because this moment, this golden breath between dark and day, is fleeting, and your tasks are many. Your hands are already raw. Grime is wedged beneath your fingernails. The handle of the hoe has worn grooves into your palms. You can feel yesterday's blisters cracking open, one by one. Still, you work. The soil is stubborn. The earth is heavy with the frost's lingering grip. But spring is here, or close enough, and planting cannot wait. From the next field over, you hear old Willem coughing again. That dry, bone-deep cough. He's been like that since last winter. But still he comes, every morning, dragging his left foot behind him. Because Willem knows. Like everyone knows. You work, or you die. The manor takes its share, a cruel certainty. Whether the harvest is good or poor, whether your back is broken or your child has fever, the taxes do not sleep. You glance up. The manor is distant, but always visible. Perched on a low rise, watching, measuring, taking. Your breath becomes steady. The air has warmed just slightly, enough to unstick your muscles. Birdsong. A soft trickle from the creek nearby. For a moment, just a moment, it almost feels peaceful. But that thought is dangerous. It makes you forget the splinters in your shoulder, the ache in your spine, the soreness in your knees. You wipe your brow with your sleeve, smearing dirt across your temple. You don't care. Your stomach growls. A crust of bread and a bit of hard cheese is all you'll have until dusk. And that will have to be enough. Because food is fuel, and there's still so much to do. In the distance, your wife tends to the chickens. She gathers what little eggs there are and watches the children from the corner of her eye as they fetch water. The bucket is heavy for their small arms, but they've already learned No one escapes the work. Not even the young. Not even the old. The blacksmith's hammer begins to ring from the village square, sharp, measured, like a heartbeat. Somewhere, the baker stokes his oven. Smoke rises lazily into the air, joining the mist. The village stirs. The sun is now above the trees. And so the day begins, fully, officially, relentlessly. You grip your hoe again. The rhythm resumes. The field is silent, but your body sings with pain. Still, you work. The village lies low, tucked into the belly of the earth. But the manor rises. From its perch atop the green knuckle of the hill, the lord's estate watches like a silent hawk. Stone walls, tall and clean, roof tiled with slate, smoke curling from chimneys, but not like the smoke in your hut. Theirs is smooth, scented, warm. You cannot see the people inside, but they are there. You feel them. They are sipping warm drinks from cups you've never touched, wrapped in cloaks made of fabrics you'll never wear, speaking softly in languages you'll never learn. Still, they rule you, not by voice or whip, but by law and coin and tradition so old it no longer needs to shout. You hear a creak behind you. The reeve approaches on horseback, one of the lord's men. His cloak flaps as he rides between fields, scribbling something on a wax tablet, counting, always counting. How many sacks of grain? How many oxen? How many men? You keep your head low. Say nothing. Do nothing to be noticed. The reeve passes. You hear him stop a few rows over, shouting something at Willem. His voice is sharp. Willem says nothing, just lowers his head and keeps digging. You do the same. Because the manor watches. It knows if your plot is late, if your yield is short, if your daughter is old enough to send as a servant, if your son is strong enough to conscript for war. And though the Lord himself may never lay eyes on you, his reach is long, his power stretches down like the branches of a black tree, rooted in paper, in seal, in blood. Sometimes at night, you imagine what it's like inside. The tapestries, the candle-lit halls, the tables heavy with meat and wine and fruit you've only seen once, when the peddler passed through in autumn. You imagine them dancing, maybe laughing, entertained by minstrels, as you chew cold stew and pick pebbles from your barley. But there's no use dreaming. Dreams are a luxury. You look to the fields again. Children now run between rows, not to play, but to gather manure in baskets, to chase birds away from the sprouting shoots, to tend to the goats tied to old fence posts. Your youngest slips on a patch of mud. You wince, but don't move. You know he'll get up. If he cries, your wife will hush him quickly. There is no time for softness, no time for anything but the grind of the day. The manor bell rings. Once, then again. It's not for you, it's for them. The midday meal. Meat, lightly, bread, soft and warm, and wine that tastes of summer berries. For you, a crust, and water if you're lucky. You take it in silence, chewing slowly. The bread tastes like yesterday, and the day before. It sticks to your teeth, dry and thick. You wash it down with a sip from a leather flask. Rainwater, slightly bitter. The sun hangs high. Your shadow is shortest now. You feel the sweat sliding down your back. Your tunic clings to your skin. Your legs ache. Your arms scream. But the bell is also a reminder. You are halfway through the day. The other half, just as long, just as punishing, lies ahead. You look up again. The manor is still there, still watching. And so you rise, back into the field, back into the rhythm, because you have no choice. You work, or you die. The sun is past its peak now, but the work does not slow. The field stretches endlessly ahead, each furrow a mouth to feed, each weed an enemy of survival, and each delay a whisper of punishment. Your fingers are cracked. Soil packed under your nails like dark stains of time. Your knees throb from kneeling, standing, kneeling again. A rhythm your bones have memorized before your mind even wakes each morning. You glance to your left. Old Marta works 2 rows over, her back bent like a bow, her hands trembling from years that added more weight than time should allow. Yet still she works, because even the old must give. You once asked her why. Why not rest? She smiled, a quiet line across a worn face, and said, Because the world doesn't care if your back hurts. It only notices when your hands stop moving. Idle hands are dangerous things. They invite suspicion, whispers, a knock at your door from the reeve, asking why your tasks are behind, why your share is low, why your presence is not felt. The young sometimes test it. The idle dreamers. They sit too long under the oak tree. They whistle when they should weed. They laugh when they should labour. But the season always breaks them. Or hunger does. Or their family does. A stern word from a father. A slap from a mother who cannot afford laziness in her house. Because the cost is not just a lowered yield. It's shame. It's thinner stew for everyone. It's being seen not as tired, but as selfish. Even the noble house has no room for idle hands. The steward must tally. The maid must scrub. The boy must polish boots for guests who arrive in carriages you'll never ride. Work exists even behind stone walls. Just cleaner, quieter, wrapped in velvet and brushed with oils. But those servants, they too know. Stop, and you're replaced. There is always someone hungrier. The wind shifts. Brings a foul smell. The tanner's pits. You nod toward the boy beside you. He's nearly of age. Maybe he'll be sent there soon. To stir the hides in piss and ash. To breathe in rot so that others can wear smooth leather across their feet. Better than starving, some say. Some say. Worse than dying. Others whisper. You bend again. Pull a stone from the soil. Toss it aside. The sound it makes, a dull thud, is familiar. Almost comforting. One stone less for the plough to catch on. One step closer to a crop that might see the winter through. The sky begins to shift. Orange at the edges. Dust glows in the air like golden mist. Evening creeps in. But the work continues. Your wife has gathered sticks near the edge of the woods. She will use them to light the stove barely more than a hole in the wall of your hut. You will return home with shoulders burning. Not to rest, but to sharpen tools, to patch your son's tunic, to crush dried herbs your mother taught you to use when the cough comes in winter. This too is labour. This too is survival. And as the sun dips lower, you do not think of comfort. You think only of how much must be done before the dark settles fully, before the candle is lit, only one. Because tallow costs coin, before your legs finally surrender. But your hands will still twitch, even in sleep. Because your body no longer belongs to dreams. It belongs to duty. Because you work, or you die. The sun is gone now. Not behind a cloud, but truly gone. Not truly gone. Swallowed by the earth, as if it too was weary from labour. You walk home with your tools slung over one shoulder. The wooden handle of the spade taps your spine with each step, like a clock counting down the hours before tomorrow begins again. Your boots squelch through the mud. The road is uneven. Stones shift beneath you, but your feet know the way even when your eyes blur. Ahead, the fire glows through the cracks in your cottage wall, a flickering line of orange in the dark. You open the door to warmth, not comfort, not peace, but warmth earned with sticks gathered, flint struck, smoke inhaled. Your wife stirs the pot. Turnip stew, more water than vegetable, but it is hot, and that makes it enough. The children sit close to the hearth. One sharpens a needle. The other tries to mend a torn cloth with fingers too small and clumsy for the task. You nod to them. They nod back. They nod back. No words needed. None spared. The table is cracked in the middle. The bowls chipped. The spoons uneven. But no one complains. You eat in silence. The only sound, the occasional bubble from the pot, the groan of the wind through the shuttered window, and the soft tap of your son's foot against the dirt floor. There is no chimney. The smoke finds its way up through a hole, but much of it lingers. It coats the ceiling in black. It stings your eyes. You've grown used to blinking through tears. As the children curl near the fire, your wife rubs her arms. She will not say it aloud, but you know what she thinks. Winter is coming too fast this year. You must cut more wood. And trade for more salt. Catch the rat that keeps stealing scraps from beneath the stool. But for now, you rest your back against the wall and feel the heat rise through the floorboards, the last heat of a dying flame. That fire is everything. It dries your soaked boots. It steams the broth. It keeps the cold fingers of sickness at bay. But wood is short. Always short. You think of the old man last year, the one who froze in his sleep after running out of logs. He worked until the very end. No one came to help. They just found him curled in a chair, covered in rags, stiff as a board. His fire had died hours before he did. Your wife looks at you now, not with fear, with urgency. Tomorrow, we'll go together, she says. You nod, not because you want to, because you must. Together, you'll walk deep into the woods, past where it's safe, past where the children are allowed to follow, to the hollow where fallen trees gather like bones. You know the dangers, wolves, snakes, the possibility of losing your way, but fire must be fed, and nobody else will bring it. You lay down at last. The straw beneath you itches. The blanket smells of smoke. But your bones soften, and as you close your eyes, you do not dream of rest. You dream of the logs you'll carry, the way your hands will burn with cold, then thaw near the hearth. Because even in your dreams, the work does not stop. You work, or you die. The wind whistles like a warning through the trees. Long before the sun dares rise, you are already moving. Your breath puffs white into the dark, and your boots crunch over frost-hardened ground. Now, beside you, your wife carries the hatchet, its iron head wrapped in cloth to silence its clink. The forest is still, not peaceful, but paused, as if even the animals are watching you pass. Branches claw at your arms, roots trip your heels, but you press deeper into the part of the woods where the old stumps lie like broken teeth. You find one, then another, each one a memory of labor already done, a tree already taken, split, burned. Farther in, you find what you came for, a fallen giant, ancient, moss-coated but dry. You lift the hatchet. Each swing bites the silence. Each echo is a bruise on the morning. And as the wood splits, you smell something ancient, a scent beneath the bark, old and earthy. Not rot, not mold, just time. Your wife gathers the kindling. You lift the heavier pieces. And on your arms ache before you're even halfway done. But there is no break. The fire at home is low, and the children need warmth. So you keep going. Hours pass, the sky brightens, but not enough to feel the sun. By the time you return, the logs piled on your back feel like another person, dead weight, but necessary. The children run to the door when they see you. Their faces are pink from cold. Their breath catches, but their eyes light up at the sight of the wood. You dump it near the hearth. Your wife sparks the flint. The fire rises again. A soft roar, a promise, and for a moment, just one. The cottage feels full. The pot goes on again. The smell of broth, of something warm, fills the air. But you know this feeling will not last. By week's end, the pile will shrink. Your hands will bleed again. And again. Still, you sit for now. The warmth kisses your fingers. The children lean against your shoulders. You feel their tiny ribs rise and fall. They do not understand yet that their survival is tied to the swing of your axe, the calluses on your palms, the firewood on your back. They only know that you are warm. That today, the fire did not go out. Outside, the wind howls. But inside, the flames dance. They crackle like applause for a performance no one else will see. The performance of surviving. You close your eyes, not to sleep, not yet, just to feel the heat. To remember why it matters. Because in a world like this, there is no comfort without pain, no rest without labor, no life without work. Work or die. The fire hisses, the smoke rises through the ceiling hole. The world outside may forget you, but the ashes you leave behind, they will remember. The bells toll, not for celebration, but for inspection. Each chime signals obedience, not joy. You rise from your straw mat before the sun. There is no time for dreams here. Dreams invite suspicion. Dreams mean you believe there's more than this, and more than them. You wash in silence. Cold water, no soap. Cleanliness isn't luxury, it's penance. The chapel doors groan open. You step inside. You do not walk. You shuffle. Eyes down, hands folded, spine bent. To look up is pride. Pride is sin. The pews creak under the weight of the villagers. Even the wood is tired. And then you hear it. The voice of Father Garrick. Low, smooth, but edged like a blade. He begins with fire. Temptation is the serpent's breath, he says, and it is everywhere. His words rise like smoke, choking the air. Do not trust the silence in your thoughts, for the devil loves to whisper where no one else can hear. You nod, even if you don't understand, because understanding is not required. Obedience is. He speaks of smiling too long, of laughter being dangerous. For what joy can a sinner truly possess? You remember your brother's grin, how he used to laugh at birds, at clouds, at silly shapes in the fields, until he disappeared. No trial, no grave, just silence. Your mother said nothing, just wept and crossed herself. You did too, even though you felt like screaming. But screaming is forbidden, questioning is forbidden. Everything outside the church is shadow. And they say only fire can cleanse shadow. The prayer ends. You mumble the Latin you do not know. The words are a shield, even if hollow. And as you leave the chapel, you feel their eyes follow you. Not your neighbours, not the priest, but the gargoyles. Those stone eyes, always watching, always waiting for you to slip. You pass the iron cage. It swings gently in the wind. Empty today, but not always. You pull your hood tight, hide your face, hide your thoughts, because the church owns you. And in this village, faith is not hope, it is survival. You left the nave, but the church did not leave you. Every street you walk is under its shadow. Every word you speak, watched. Every smile judged. Because joy too must be approved. In the year of our Lord 1327, a woman in Rouen smiled at her child during a funeral. She was dragged before the town priest. They asked her, why mock the dead with your teeth? She wept. She begged. She was shaved bald and made to walk barefoot for 7 nights, carrying a wooden cross larger than she was. The smile never returned. The church called it penance. You called it survival. But how did it become this way? Let's go back to the beginning, to a time when the church was not only God's house, but your landlord, your judge, your banker, your prison. Sunday is sacred. Not resting on the 7th day is punishable. But what if you overslept? Overslept. One man in Coventry did. He was made to kneel in the square. No shoes, no cloak, winter wind howling. A sign around his neck. I shamed the Lord with sloth. And you? You were expected to watch and learn. Even bedtime stories came with sermons. Say your Hail Marys, or demons will dance on your chest while you sleep. Children feared sleep. Not because of monsters, but because forgetting to pray might mean damnation. You learned early. Obedience was safety. Curiosity was heresy. A boy once asked a monk, if God made everything, did he make sin too? The monk smiled, not kindly. By nightfall, the boy's father had his tongue cut, not killed, just silenced. So the lesson could be seen and passed on. For the nobles, piety was politics. Kneel in church, pay the bishop, fund a monastery. Not doing so could mean excommunication, which was worse than death, because if you died excommunicated, your body wasn't buried. You were thrown into the woods, left for wolves. Your soul, declared unsavable. Even kings feared this. In 1197, a duke tried to defy the pope. He withheld a land tax. The next week, every church bell in his realm went silent. No weddings, no baptisms, no last rites. People panicked. The duke bowed, because silence from the church meant silence from heaven. And confession? It wasn't a whisper between you and God. It was surveillance. The priest knew your sins, which meant the church knew your mind, your fears, your mistakes. One wrong phrase, and you might not be forgiven. You might be reported. A baker once confessed to doubting the virgin birth. He thought it absurd. He said it out loud, hoping for mercy. 3 days later, he was on fire. They called it justice. It wasn't always fire. Sometimes it was shame. A red S painted on your door. A week without food. forced sermons, kneeling in ash. The church didn't need swords. It had fear. It had eternal damnation. And worst of all, it had you believing you deserved it. She dared to speak too loud, to question too much, to smile without permission. Now, she lights a candle every day to beg forgiveness for being human. And so we ask, what is sin when holiness controls the mirror? Stay with us. She had herbs. She had knowledge. She healed the fever of a boy when the priest's prayers had failed. They called her wise woman, until the church called her something else. Witch, that's how it began. A cow dies suddenly. A child falls ill. The harvest is late. And someone must be blamed. Not the baron. Not the priest. Her, because her eyes were too green. Her steps too silent. Her presence too other. In the year 1486, a book was written, Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. It taught priests how to find them, how to try them, how to break them. It said, all witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which is in women insatiable. And with that, the fires began. You want to test for a witch? Tie her hands. Throw her in the river. If she sinks and drowns, she was innocent. If she floats, she's a witch and must be burned. Either way, she dies. They say 9 million people were accused. Most were women, midwives, widows, girls who dared to walk alone. A girl once laughed during mass. Too loud, she was taken that night. Shaved, starved, stripped, confessed under the weight of 10 iron stones. She said she flew at night with demons. She said she cursed the crops. The crops, not because it was true, but because she wanted the torture to stop. They burned her in silence, her ashes scattered in a well. No marker, no name. What? The church said it was purifying the land, burning sin, protecting souls. But whose souls? A girl's body was not hers. Her thoughts, suspicious. Her words, dangerous. To know too much, to speak too well, to disobey, was heresy. They whispered about you too. Your shadow passed too quickly. You wore no cross that day. You read a book that wasn't the Bible. Soon, the whispers had weight. And in the church's eyes, whispers were enough. Because in the church's eyes, doubt was a crime. Independence was rebellion. Independence was rebellion. And silence could still be a sin. The people who lived nearby, they still prayed. Because they were afraid not to. So ask yourself, when the fire fade and the whispers go quiet, what's left? Ashes? Or memory? The story of a Bible you were never allowed to read. The Bible, the holy book, the Word of God, the guide to salvation. And for over 1,000 years, you weren't allowed to read it. Not in your tongue, not in your hands, not with your eyes. Because the church said, only we can interpret it. Only Latin is holy. Only we speak for God. And so, they chained the Bible to the altar. Not metaphorically. Literally. Massive iron links. Locked to stone. Not to keep it safe, but to keep you out. You were told not to ask. Not to question. Not to seek. Just obey. But some did ask. Like John Wycliffe. A scholar, a priest, a man who believed that truth should not be chained. He translated the Bible into English, so the poor could read, so the farmer could know, so the widow could understand. For this, the church excommunicated him. After death, they dug up his bones, burned them, and scattered the ashes into a river. They feared his words, even after he was gone. Then came Johannes Gutenberg, the printing press. And with it, the word escaped. The Bible could be copied, multiplied, smuggled. People began to read. In German, in English, in Dutch, in tongues of the common soul. And with every page turned, a chain snapped. But the church watched. They called it heresy. They burned books. They burned people who owned books. In 1536, William Tyndale was strangled, then burned. His crime? Translating the Bible into English. His final words were not a scream, but a prayer. Lord, open the King of England's eyes. What were they so afraid of? That you might read, Blessed are the poor, or Call no man father, for you have one Father in heaven, or even, The truth shall set you free, because truth is dangerous. When people read for themselves, they start to think, and when they think, they begin to question the ones who told them not to. The forbidden book was never just about theology. It was about control. Control of your thoughts, your fears, your eternal fate. Because if only one man can read the map to heaven, then only he can tell you how to walk it. And if that man stands in a robe behind stone walls, then you will kneel and give. They said Latin was sacred, but you didn't speak it. So every sermon, every ritual, every command was in a language you couldn't understand. You nodded, crossed yourself, gave your coins, and went home, still in darkness. The book they called holy wasn't yours. It was never meant for your hands, only your obedience, until some were brave enough to bleed for it. But books are only one form of control. The real prison? It's deeper, closer. Your own body. They told you, your body is a temple. But then they taught you to hate it. You were born in sin, they said, not just capable of it, but made of it. Your flesh, corrupted. Your thoughts, impure. Your desires, demonic. So you learnt to confess, not just actions, but thoughts, private dreams, midnight feelings. You whispered your shame, and they listened. The church heard your secrets. They catalogued them. They judged them. And they reminded you, you are nothing without us. Only through penance will you be clean. Only through suffering will you be saved. And so came self-punishment, flagellation, silence, starvation, isolation. To purify the flesh, they said, to drive out sin. But behind the curtain, they indulged. The same leaders who warned you against lust held feasts of flesh and gold. The same priests who cursed temptation abused children in locked rooms. You bled for purity. They laughed in luxury, but the pain wasn't just physical. It was deeper. Mental. Spiritual. They told you, desire is dirty. Your body is the enemy. And for centuries, this belief bled into everything. Sex was a sin. Pleasure was a trap. Women were Eve, the first sinner, the temptress, the gateway to hell. So they covered them, silenced them, burned them. Even birth became a shameful act. Women who gave life were kept silent in churches, denied the pulpit, denied the altar, because they were unclean. Even birth became a shameful act. Women who gave life were kept silent in churches, denied the pulpit, denied the altar, because they were unclean. That was the plan. Not just to control your body, but to make you police it. Because the best slave is the one who holds their own chains. But one final prison remained, and it may be the oldest of all. Not your land, and not your body, not even your soul, your time. They didn't just take your body. They didn't just own your land. They wanted your life, your hours, your seasons, your future. Time once belonged to the sun, to farmers, to rivers, to birdsong and moonlight, to you. But then, they rewrote the clock. Every hour was assigned, not by nature, but by ritual, lauds, matins, vespers, compline, morning prayer, midday silence, evening fear. Your days were no longer yours. They were the church's. The calendar, rewritten. Months, renamed. Festivals, repurposed. Pagan seasons became saints' days. Harvest celebrations became holy fasts. Weddings were bound to approval. Funerals paid for in penance. And so the year itself bent its knee. Spring meant rebirth, but only through baptism. Winter meant death, but only Christ's suffering. Even your birthday could not be celebrated, unless it honored a saint. You woke and prayed. You worked under church bells. You slept under church time. Even the 7-day week wasn't always 7. But they decided it should be, because on the 7th day they said, God rested. So you should too, but only with their permission. And if you rebelled, if you danced too late, if you sang without a hymn, if you celebrated the sun returning instead of Christ's birth, that was heresy. That was blasphemy. That was dangerous. Because joy, without their permission, was freedom. And nothing scared them more. They didn't just want you obedient. They wanted you busy. Busy repenting. Busy praying. Busy fearing. Busy obeying. Too busy to think. Too busy to question. Too busy to dream. So here you are, centuries later, still living on a calendar they built. Still waking to bells they rang. Still fearing the smile that feels too big. The sins they named are now your instincts. The rules they carved are now your culture. You were born free, but baptized in chains. But if they built this prison, you can burn it down, in a place where silence is safer than truth, and obedience is more precious than justice. The boy learned early, keep your eyes down, your words few, and your footsteps light. His name was Edric. And tonight, he was cold. The year is 1324. The air over the English Shire is wet with the ghost of rain, and the streets are slick with mud. Lanterns flicker from crooked windows, casting golden eyes into the night. The village lies still, but not peaceful. Because peace in this time is a privilege, not a promise. Edric pulls his worn cloak tighter as he walks past the butcher's stall, where yesterday a young girl was dragged by her wrist and strapped to the whipping post. Her crime? Speaking back to the reeve when he pushed her brother into the gutter. No trial, no second chances, just a crowd, a whip, and a stain left behind that the rain could not wash. This was justice, if you could call it that. And Edric had seen enough to know better than to intervene. Justice here did not wear robes. It wore boots and iron. He keeps walking. In the centre of the square stands the stocks, wooden and worn, slick with grime and rot. They never stay empty for long. You could end up there for the smallest things. Stealing bread, scolding a pig, or even cursing when you stubbed your toe. What mattered wasn't the crime. It was who accused you, and who listened. And tonight, in the centre of the square, a man is in the stocks. Old Tom, the cooper, a kind man with crooked hands. Someone said he watered down ale. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. His eyes are puffy, his head slumped, spittle dried at the corner of his lips. His boots have been stolen, and children throw pebbles at his knees while their parents look away. There is no constable to stop them, no court to call upon. Just shame, cold and public. Edric stops near the edge of the square. He knows not to get too close. Eyes in this world are quick to suspect. Behind the pillory stands the flogging post, scarred and dark with old blood. It's been used too often to be ceremonial. Everyone fears it, even the bailiff himself, who once tied his own brother to it, looks at it like it might speak. Punishment in this world is not rare. It is expected. It is normal. And worse, it is public. Always public. So you learn. You learn to stay invisible. To never answer back. To never run unless you're told to run. To never speak unless spoken to. To never look a guard in the eyes. Especially not the ones with black cloaks. They don't carry rope. They carry iron. Edric's stomach growls. He hasn't eaten since the day before yesterday. His hands brush the crust of old bread tucked into his cloak, stolen quietly from the back of the baker's stall. He chewed half of it yesterday. Tonight, he would finish the rest, slowly, carefully, without being seen. Because if he were caught, there would be no words. No one would ask why. The whip would ask for him, and the town would listen. Edric makes his way down an alley near the tavern, where the sound of laughter spills out over the cracked shutters. Warmth lives inside, behind thick wooden doors. But warmth has a cost. He finds a spot behind a stack of barrels, sits and rests his head against the damp wall. His legs ache. His eyes grow heavy. But he knows sleep here is dangerous. He must rest with one eye open, always, because this world does not offer safety, only the illusion of it, wrapped in routine. Tomorrow, someone else will be in the stocks, or at the post, or buried in silence. He stole a loaf, someone whispers again. But even that justification feels thinner now, like smoke curling from a dying fire. A quiet settles over the square. Not peace, never peace, just fatigue. Judgment delivered not through justice but habit. And just like that, life resumes. The cobbler across the square hammers leather. A baby cries from a window above. Church bells toll the 6th hour. The guards, still leaning on halberds, look as though they might fall asleep. But the boy? He must wait. Another hour in the pillory. Not because it changes him, but because it reminds the rest. Now follow me through the alleys behind the square, past shuttered windows, past whispers behind curtains, past fear behind faces. We reach a stone building, small, cold, no signs, but every peasant knows what it is. The House of Correction. A jail, a punishment chamber, a place where even suspicion, not proof, could land you inside. Your neighbour said you murmured against the Lord. They heard you sang a foreign song. Your skirt was too bright. You laughed in church. No trial, just accusation. That was enough. Inside, chains on walls, rats in corners, buckets for beds, and punishments not written in law, but practiced all the same. Let us follow a man inside now. He's thin, hands trembling, a farmhand who spoke back when the tax collector took the family's only chicken. He didn't curse, he didn't strike. He asked, "Please, may we eat this one?" Wrong question. Now, he kneels on cold stone, a heavy rod in the hands of the guard. A beating begins, not because of what he did, but because of where he stood in society. At the edge of this darkness stands the stocks, a wooden frame in the centre of every town, made not just to restrain, but to humiliate. A woman accused of watering her beer, a child who dropped a candle in church, a boy who ran instead of walked in front of a noble, all tied into place. Not for hours, sometimes for days. The sun burns your skin, the rain soaks your clothes, people spit or throw mouldy bread, dogs bark, children laugh. Your shame becomes the town's entertainment. But the cruelty wasn't only public. Behind closed doors, familial discipline mirrored society. A father could beat his son, not just for wrongdoing, but for disobedience. A noble could whip a servant for bringing wine late. A priest could punish an orphan for crying too loud in the pew. These were not crimes. These were not rules. These were expectations, vague and changing, and you either conformed or suffered. And the worst part? No one thought this strange. Children grew into adults who did the same. Mothers wiped blood off backs and said, "Better this than hanging." Fathers whispered, "Obey, son, obey, and live." The fear was generational, the pain inherited. And no matter how often the stocks were used, they were always ready again. As the night draws close, let us return to the square, where the pillory now stands empty. The boy has gone home, or maybe to the House of Correction. No one knows. No one dares ask. You lie in your own straw bedding now, wrapped in thought, safe but distant. The fire crackles low. The winds moan through the cracks in the wooden walls. This was not fiction. This was the world before rights, before protection, before dignity was recognized. A world where punishment came first and mercy last. It is dawn again, and the town square is already humming with dread. The stocks have been reset, splintered wood cleaned of yesterday's blood. Not because anyone cared, because they need them again today. Another name is shouted. A child, not more than 11 years old, caught pocketing a heel of bread, too stale for even the dogs. He's dragged by the collar. His mother wails, but dares not resist, for fear she too will be flogged for obstruction. The child is whipped, not because it will reform him, not because it deters anyone else, but because it is expected. Justice was not blind in the medieval world. It was watching, wide-eyed, eager to punish, eager to remind you, you have no power. no voice, and certainly no rights. Inside the manorial dungeon, darker truths fester. Men and women accused of theft, heresy, or bad character rot in silence. Their trials, if they come, they arrive after the beatings, after the confessions beaten out of them. A cobbler named Elias refused to give up his leather to the Lord's steward. He called it his livelihood. They called it treason. He was tied to the pillory, head and arms locked tight. Children threw mud. The blacksmith's apprentice threw stones. After a full day, Elias could no longer lift his head. By morning, his punishment was complete. But he never stitched a shoe again. FFX, fire crackling, low coughing. In village taverns, whispers spread quietly. He was right. It wasn't fair, but none dared speak those words aloud in the square, because punishment wasn't just a response. It was a performance. The message was always clear. Speak against us, and you will suffer. Stand out, and you will be broken. Even innocence cannot save you. And so, even those who had done nothing wrong were never truly safe. A widow who laughed too loudly, a farmer who forgot to bow, a beggar who touched the Lord's horse, all faced consequences that outlived the crime, because in a world ruled by fear, your breath itself was borrowed. Step now into the manor's heart, where the Lord sits not just as ruler, but as judge, jury, and if he so chooses, executioner. This was the law, not written on scrolls, not taught in schools, but spoken from one man's mouth and enforced with the lash. A man accused of trespass is brought forward. He was gathering herbs for his fevered wife, but those woods, though wild and ancient, were claimed by the Lord's banner. The steward reads aloud the charges. No lawyer speaks in his defense. There are no lawyers here, only silence and the Lord's eyes. The punishment? 2 days in the stocks, and a fine greater than the man's year's wage. If he cannot pay, the beating will begin. In another corner, a woman is tried. The charge? She spoke out. Said the taxes were too high, that the Lord feasted while their children starved. It took only one ear to hear, one tongue to whisper what she'd said. She is sentenced to public flogging. 30 lashes, no mercy. In these halls, there is no justice. There is only order and fear, cold and sharp as the blades the guards carry. Laws shifted like wind in the wheat. One day, you may trade at the crossroads. The next, the crossroads belong to the manor, and your presence there is a crime. Even outside the walls, the reach of the law is long. You hear of a mason's son taken for training in the castle guard, but he never returned. No word, no grave, just whispers that the Lord needed more hands. This is not justice. This is ownership. A lord could take your harvest, your livestock, even your daughter for service. And what could you do? Appeal to a higher court? There was none. The king lived 100 miles away. The church, silent. And you were just another peasant with no name. And calloused hands. Sometimes a brave soul would flee. Into the forests. To distant towns. To freedom? But even there, they might be hunted, branded as a deserter, or worse, a thief of the Lord's property, because you were never yours. Not truly. You belonged to the land, and the land belonged to him. At the centre of the village, beneath the withering gaze of a wooden effigy of the Lord, lies the square, not a marketplace, not a place for children to play. This is where punishment is displayed, for all to see, and all to fear. A boy is tied to the post. A boy, barely 16, accused of stealing a turnip from the manor storehouse. No one truly saw it, but the turnip is missing, and the boy was nearby, and someone needed to be blamed. So the whip is raised. They do not whip him just to punish. They do it to teach, to remind every eye that watches, even children, especially children, that the Lord's hand never hesitates. You think this will break the boy, but it doesn't. He does not cry. He stares back, eyes full of fire. By nightfall, he disappears, escapes. And though they send dogs after him, he is never found. But something else is left behind in the village. A whisper. They whisper about resistance, about running, about fighting. And then another punishment is issued, not for stealing, not for murder, for listening to rumors, for sowing discontent. An old woman known for her stories is dragged into the square. They make an example of her. They tie her to the same post. But there are no whips this time. They use silence. They leave her there in the cold. For 2 nights. For no food, no water. When she is finally released, she cannot walk, and no one dares carry her home. The punishments were not just to hurt. They were to shape, to bend, to mold the minds of the peasants. Don't speak, don't stray. So don't think, just work. Obey, endure, and live, if that's what you can call it. You saw a man once accused of blasphemy. He claimed the Lord had no right to collect taxes on the Sabbath. They branded him on his cheek. A symbol, not of shame, but of warning. Everywhere he went, that mark went too. Doors would close, eyes would avert, even the dogs would growl. He vanished weeks later. No one asked where he went, because the real punishment was not what they did to your body. It was what they taught your neighbors to feel about you, to fear you, to avoid you, to report you. Punishment became tradition, and tradition became obedience. And obedience became silence. But beneath the hush of every villager, behind every bowed head, you wonder, is there anyone still dreaming of something else? A different kind of life, one without lashes, without posts, without fear. The morning dew clung to the wooden stocks in the village square, glistening faintly beneath the overcast sky. As the first light pushed through the grey veil above, the remnants of last night's punishment lingered in the air. Blood, sweat, silence, a silence that had become part of the landscape. Cassian, now older, now wiser, sat upon a cold stone, watching the square from a shadowed distance. His back still bore the welts from years past, but his eyes carried deeper wounds. He had seen too many punished for too little, some for bread, some for questions, some for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The village had changed. New faces replaced the old, but the rules, those carved in fear, remained untouched. And the stocks, still there, painted, patched, but not forgotten. A young boy now stood inside them, no more than 10 years old. His offence? Laughing during Mass. His mother, sobbing nearby, dared not speak. To question the sentence was to risk her own place beside him. Cassian turned away, his heart too heavy to watch. He wandered past the church, its towering spire once a symbol of hope, now an omen, every stone etched with judgment, every bell tolling warnings rather than welcomes. The priest, draped in velvet and gold, declared each lash as necessary. Discipline is mercy, he proclaimed. Pain leads the soul back to obedience. But obedience had a cost. Cassian remembered the baker's apprentice, Leah, caught giving a stale loaf to a starving child. 5 lashes. The child later died of sickness. And Leah, she disappeared. Some whispered she ran. Others knew she was taken to the pit behind the magistrate's hall, where punishment went unwitnessed. He passed the pit now, covered with stone, silent, but to Cassian, it always hummed, faint cries echoing through the years. There were those who believed the punishments were fair, that rules must be followed, that order required pain. But Cassian knew better. He had lived the truth. The floggings didn't create order, they created fear, and fear, when left unchecked, grows into cruelty. As he walked, he encountered the painter again, the one who had once been beaten for sketching a laughing child. Now older, her hands twisted with pain, she still painted, but not joy, only shadows. Her canvases, quiet screams trapped in colour. Cassian paused. He asked, "Why do you still paint?" She looked up, eyes tired but alive. "Because if I stop, then they've truly won." And that was it. That was survival. In a world that punished breath, punished mistakes, punished dreams, resistance lived in the smallest things. A sketch, a whispered story, a helping hand offered when no one was watching. Cassian began to collect these moments. The baker who left bread under benches, The old man who taught children to read in secret. The seamstress who stitched protest into her patterns. They were not rebels, not warriors, just people who remembered that pain was not the only way. The stocks remained, yes, and the whip still cracked. But so did courage, quietly, persistently. As Cassian stood once more at the edge of the square watching another punishment unfold, he no longer turned away. He didn't cheer, he didn't protest. He remembered. And in that memory, he planted a seed. Not of vengeance, but of hope. Because someday, someone would write the laws with compassion. Someday, the stocks would rot and never be rebuilt. Someday, punishment would not be the first answer. And until that day, stories like his must be whispered, must be remembered, must be shared under moonlight and behind closed doors. For if pain was the language of control, then stories were the language of freedom. And Cassian? Cassian became a storyteller. No hospitals, no trained surgeons, no clean needles, no anesthesia, just dark rooms, foul-smelling herbs and prayers, whispered over sweating foreheads. We begin in a cottage, one room, low ceiling, damp walls. A boy, no more than 10, wheezes by the fire. His mother rubs his chest with onion and garlic, murmuring a prayer. He's not alone. Fever stalks the village, and no one knows why. Neighbouring homes echo with the same coughing, children too weak to rise, elders fading into the wool blankets that try to warm them. And so, the healer is called. She's not a doctor, she's the village wise woman. Hair long, eyes cloudy, pouch of dried leaves hanging from her belt. She doesn't ask questions, she doesn't need to. She smells the sickness, feels the dampness of the sheets. She ties a bundle of herbs to the ceiling beam, sprinkles powdered bark into boiling water. The room fills with smoke and steam. Then, the knives come out. He opens the boy's skin near the elbow, just a scratch enough to bleed. She places a ceramic bowl underneath to catch it. Let the bad humours drain, she says. The mother doesn't flinch. She's seen it before. For centuries, illness was thought to be caused by imbalance. Too much blood, phlegm, black bile or yellow bile. So they bled the sick, always, even if it killed them. But there was another cure. A creature feared and worshipped in equal measure, the leech. With a trembling hand, the woman opens a small jar. It squirms, wet, black, blind. The leech. She presses it onto the boy's skin. It bites, latches, feeds, slow and silent. To many, this was salvation. To others, torture. The fever broke, or it didn't. The child lived, or faded quietly before the dawn. But the world didn't pause, because illness was just one of many ways life reminded you how fragile you were. Let's shift our gaze. To a farmer in the fields, strong and sure, until a slip of the scythe tears open his thigh. There are no emergency rooms, no morphine, no sterile gauze. He stumbles home, blood soaking through coarse linen. His wife knows what to do. She heats a rod in the fire until it glows. She doesn't speak. He doesn't beg. He bites down on a piece of wood. Cauterization. Fire against wound. A brutal attempt to stop infection or at least slow it. In the absence of understanding, pain was the path. Pain meant something was happening. Pain meant you were still alive. But not every wound was open. Some were hidden under the skin, deep in the joints, or buried in the bone. A boy falls from a tree, his arm twisted at an impossible angle. He doesn't cry anymore, just stares, pale and cold. What now? They summon the blacksmith, not to forge, but to set the bone. The blacksmith had strength, and sometimes that was more important than knowledge. They laid the boy on a wooden board, tied his other limbs with rope. And then, a pull, a snap, a scream that echoes into the rafters. The bone is set. Whether it heals right, no one can say. In time, the arm might twist, shrink, or wither entirely. But he lived, and that's what mattered. In this world, survival wasn't measured in comfort. It was measured in endurance. And the people of this time, they endured more than most today could ever imagine. The bones were set, the bleeding stopped. But there were darker forces, forces no fire or iron could defeat. It started with a cough. A small one. barely noticed. And then another, then 10, and soon the coughing stopped. Not because it got better, but because they couldn't breathe anymore. The year is 1348, and death moves silently through the streets. A black tide with no mercy. The Great Plague has arrived. They didn't know about bacteria. They didn't know about hygiene. They didn't know the fleas on rats were carrying their doom, but they knew something was wrong. So they did what they could. They bled the sick. Leeches by the dozen. Bah! They placed onions on their feet. They burned sweet herbs to cleanse the air. When that failed, they turned to prayer. They turned to prayer. Churches filled. Heads bowed low. Whips struck bare backs as the flagellants begged God for mercy. Their bodies bled, believing pain could purify sin, and maybe stop the plague. But God was silent. And the bodies piled up. Homes were sealed shut with screaming families inside. No one dared to open the door. A red mark meant death lived within. Bring out your dead. The cry echoed through every town. Carts rolled by, not for food, not for wood, but to collect corpses. Some were still breathing when they were taken. "Mama, where are you going?" "Why is the priest crying?" There was no cure, only hope, and that too was fading. But somehow, some survived. Their blood, for reasons unknown, resisted the darkness. They didn't know why. They simply called it a miracle, and those who lived bore the scars. Of loss, of fear, and of watching the world end around them. The plague passed, eventually, but it never truly left. It lived on in whispers, in stories, in old scars, because in a world with no doctors, only faith and luck stood between life and the grave. When the Black Death loosened its grip, the silence left behind was deafening. Families gone, villages half empty, a trust in men, kings, priests, leech bearers shattered, but life has a stubborn way of pushing through the cracks. And so, in the absence of learned men, it was the women who stepped in. Not in white coats, not in grand halls, but in cottages and woods, by candlelight and instinct. Midwives, herbalists, wise women. They had no degrees, but they knew the rhythms of the body like poetry. A warm compress here, a tincture of valerian root there. And for fever? Moon water, left overnight under the full moon, collected in silence, believed to absorb the moon's cool breath. To ease birth pains, they'd place lavender beneath the pillow. To stop bleeding, they'd boil yarrow and force it down between cries. To break a fever, they'd whisper to rosemary and brew its leaves into a bitter tea. They weren't always right, but they cared. And in those days, that was rare enough. But knowledge without power is dangerous. And these women, with their strange jars and whispered cures, became a threat. To the church, to the guild of men, to those who feared what they could not control. Soon, healing became heresy. A birth gone wrong? A plague returning? A cow stopped giving milk? Blame the midwife. Burn the witch. So many who had saved were now condemned. By fire, by rope, by fear. Yet, in secret, their knowledge survived. Tucked in song, passed in stories, etched in herbs pressed between pages of forbidden books. A healer's knowledge became a whisper, a survival tactic. As mothers taught daughters, one hand stirring the soup, the other grinding foxglove, and in this twilight between wisdom and superstition, the seeds of real medicine were quietly growing. No scalpels, no x-rays, no anesthesia, just bark, berries and belief. Because when there were no doctors, there were always women, and they carried more than herbs in their hands. They carried hope. Long pause, but hope was fragile, and the next chapter would shatter it once more. With screams, with steel, with the return, the battlefield. A place where screams replaced prayers, where limbs outnumbered bullets, and where medicine had no time to think. This was not the healer's cottage. This was not the careful whisper of moon water. This was blood, mud, and urgency. As empires clashed, as flags were torn and stitched again. Men didn't die from bullets. They died from what came after. Infection, gangrene, shock, tetanus. A wound could be smaller than a coin, and still end a man by nightfall. And so the surgeon arrived, not with whispers, but with saws. They called it speed surgery. No anesthesia, just a bottle of whiskey. If you were lucky, hold him down. Slice, saw, cauterize. 3 minutes, maybe 4. If he lived, he thanked you. If he died, you just moved on to the next body. Bullets shattered more than bones. They shattered everything we knew about the human body. How blood flows, how organs fail, how trauma lingers. Not just in flesh, but in the soul. And the doctors, they weren't saints. They were butchers learning through failure. They kept notes, obsessed over results, documented what worked and what killed. A soldier stitched with horsehair lived longer than one sewn with silk. And a wound washed in boiled water festered less. Trial, error, blood, repeat. And when the battle ended, when fields were emptied of the dying, the surgeons returned to the cities. Different, wiser, haunted, and determined. What they'd learnt in chaos would shape medicine forever. They now knew the body as a battlefield itself. Every artery, a road, a road. Every bone, a barricade. Every infection, an ambush. And though they still lacked microscopes or antibiotics, they had gained something medicine never had before. Data. Hospitals changed. Surgery was now a practice, not a gamble. Clean tools. Structured records. Triage. And yet, with every patient laid on a cold table, they still asked, what causes this? Why does the fever rise? How does the body fight back? The answers were coming, hidden in things no one could see yet. And tiny things. Invisible killers. The doctors had survived the war. Now, they had to survive what was inside the body. And so we enter the next chapter. A war not of steel, but of science. There were no more swords, no more saws or battlefields. But the war was far from over. This time, the enemy was silent. It had no face, no sound, no mercy. It lived in water, on hands, in the air we breathed. It was invisible. The doctors were tired. They had seen too much blood, too much death. But now, they were curious. They'd seen wounds that healed and wounds that rotted. They'd seen 2 patients cut the same way. One lived, one died. They needed to know why. And so they turned to the microscope. A simple piece of glass, but it opened a world they had never imagined. And there, they saw it. Not ghosts, not curses, but life. Tiny life. Bacteria, germs, pathogens. The battlefield had entered the bloodstream. The bloodstream. Ignaz Semmelweis watched as mothers died after childbirth, until he made them wash their hands, and deaths vanished. Joseph Lister sprayed his tools with carbolic acid, and for the first time, surgery didn't mean certain death. They weren't saving lives with blades anymore. They were saving lives with cleanliness. Soap, steam, silence. Silence. But medicine would not stop there. It never does. In the shadows of sickness, new minds emerged. Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch, Alexander Fleming. Each armed not with weapons, but with questions. What causes illness? How does infection spread? And most importantly, can it be stopped? The answer came by accident. A forgotten petri dish, a stray mold, a clear ring where no bacteria grew. And just like that, penicillin was born. The world changed overnight. Infections that once claimed kings and children alike were now nothing more than a prescription. Medicine had entered a golden age. Vaccines, antibiotics, anesthesia. The scalpel was now guided by science, not superstition. And yet, the war against the invisible is not over. It never really will be. We've beaten smallpox, but viruses evolve. We've conquered infection, but new ones rise. And still, one thing remains. The healer. The hand on a forehead. The hope in a hospital hallway. The scientist peering into a microscope at 2 a.m. The nurse whispering, "You're going to be okay." From leeches to lasers, from moon water to microchips. Medicine is not just science. It's memory. It's mistakes. So, it's love wrapped in latex gloves. And you are part of that story now. Every time you recover, every time you ask questions, every time you choose to care, you carry forward thousands of years of human hope. Because in the end, medicine isn't just about fighting death. It's about fighting to live, to understand, to feel, to love again. The sun rose not in golden glory, but in a grey mist of smoke and stink. It was morning in the medieval town of Thistle Hollow, and the air already reeked of yesterday. Beneath the high stone walls, behind wooden shutters and crumbling thatch roofs, life stirred slowly, heavily, under the weight of another filthy day. A boy named Aldrich, no older than 12, tiptoed across the alley behind his home, his bare feet pressed into the mud. But it wasn't just mud. It was slop, animal waste, rot, and worse. He held his breath, but it didn't help. The stench was part of the air itself, thick and sour, rising from chamber pots dumped carelessly into the gutter. Last night, someone had been sick again. The puddle still steamed faintly. A pile of fish guts buzzed with early flies beside it. And rats. Rats were always watching. One scurried past Aldrich's foot, bold, fat, and unafraid, its slick tail leaving a line in the filth. Even this early, the streets of Thistle Hollow were alive with noise, but not the cheerful kind. Hackers' coughs, a smith cursing the morning cold, a dog growling over a rotting bone. Aldrich reached the well in the centre of the square. The bucket rope was crusted with grime, its pulley squealing as he drew water. But the water was never clean. Brownish, cloudy. It smelled faintly like cabbage, and something worse. His mother would boil it, of course, and strain it through cloth. But everyone knew, deep down, that the water could still kill you. So many had died last winter. A fever that spread like whispered curses. 2 from their street alone. No one knew what it was. But the rats were everywhere then. No one ever trusted the rats. The rats who walked in the homes of the poor. There were no drains, no pipes, no toilets. The chamber pot was your only relief, and in the night it overflowed. You'd toss it from the window, shouting Garde-Law to warn passers-by. Sometimes you forgot to shout. Sometimes you didn't care. The streets were thick with waste, rain, blood from butcher shops, ashes from hearths, straw, dead animals, rotting vegetables, all mashed into a sludge that never quite dried. By midday, the smell would be unbearable. The noble folk? They had perfumed handkerchiefs and fancy gloves, but they walked the same streets, stepped in the same filth, shared the same fleas. No one escaped the stink. And in every corner, lice. Tiny, crawling reminders that no matter how high-born or low, the dirt was in your clothes, your hair, your skin. It itched in silence, itched in sleep, spread from wool to wool, from child to mother, from monk to lord. Aldrich returned home with the water. His mother, pale and thin, stirred something in a pot. She didn't look up. His younger sister whimpered in the corner, scratching at her scalp. "We'll wash tonight," his mother muttered, "if the soap hasn't moulded again." Washing meant cold water, stiff linen, and lice that never really left. But they did what they could. Behind the house, waste overflowed the compost heap. Pigs sniffed the edges. Chickens pecked at strange scraps. This was the world. No one expected better. No garbage men, no drains, no officials coming to clean the streets. Just you. Your broom, your faith, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, the fever wouldn't come this year. But the rats were already bold, and the fleas were already biting. As dusk falls, Aldrich sits at the edge of the square. He watches a man drag a dead dog into the alley. No one blinks, no one cares. The town of Thistle Hollow sleeps under a blanket of rot. But this is home. This is life. This is only the beginning. In the fog-cloaked dawn of Brackmere, a boy named Aaron rose before the town's coughs began. His boots, still wet from yesterday's sewer slog, squished softly as he crossed the creaking floorboards. It was time. Brackmere did not wake with birdsong. It groaned, it wheezed. Smoke from hundreds of hearths clung low over cobblestones, mixing with the acrid scent of rot, dung, and wet wool. The streets were narrow, barely more than passageways, and each one ran with a thin, sluggish stream of waste. Buckets of filth from the upper windows splashed the stones below. Nobody looked up. Everyone knew the risk, and carried his rake, his pail, and his cart. He was a night soil boy, born into a family of waste collectors. Not by choice. Brackmere chose for you, just as it chose the baker's son to become a baker, or the sick to remain sick. He pushed the cart through the rat alley, where hungry eyes blinked from behind barrels and beneath cloth-draped stalls. No rats feared people anymore. They ruled here. One darted over Aaron's foot. He didn't flinch. This was his route. He'd rake the waste toward the gutters, pour it into barrels and take it down to the muck fields, where piles of filth grew like hills. From those hills the town's gardens were fertilized, or so the elders claimed. He passed a butcher, dragging a bucket of red water into the street. It splashed into the gutter with a sickening slop, and nodded to him. The butcher nodded back. On this morning, though, something was different. There was a stillness. Fewer feet on the streets, more shutters closed. A crier should have been shouting news, but only the wind whispered. He felt it in the soles of his feet. Something foul lingered beyond the usual stench. Then came the sound, a single wet cough from behind a closed door. It was not the cough of a drunk or a miner. It was deeper, ragged, unnatural, unpaused. The door was marked. A black smear of tar. 2 vertical lines, 1 horizontal slash. It meant sickness. It meant stay away. But the door creaked open. A child stared out. Her cheeks were flushed, too red, her eyes glassy. Arn took a step back. He knew what this meant. The plague was here. Again. As Aaron turned his cart and wheeled it down the slope toward the river, every sound seemed louder now. Every footfall, every bird that didn't sing. The rats followed him. They knew what was coming. Down by the docks, an old herbalist named Maud was boiling something bitter in a pot. She saw him coming. "Too quiet," she said. He nodded. "The bell's about to toll again. Best finish your rounds early, boy." Anne didn't reply. He just kept walking, past the tannery with its horrid stench of urine and hides, toward the graveyard at the far end of Brackmere. As he passed, he noticed something new, fresh graves. 3. He had passed this place yesterday. Those mounds were not there before. He stopped. Then, a whisper of wind carried the distant haunting sound of the church bell. Once, twice, 2, thrice, 3 tolls, 3 dead. But it was only morning, and the day had just begun. The sun rose again over the narrow lanes of Eldergate, bathing the grime-slicked cobblestones in a dull, reluctant gold. Inside the apothecary's crooked shop, Elias stirred from a restless sleep. The scent of sour herbs and damp parchment lingered in the stale air. He had barely slept, kept awake by the skittering beneath the floorboards. Rats, dozens of them, maybe more. The townsfolk whispered that rats had their own society beneath the streets, smart, hungry, and always growing. Some believed they weren't just animals, but omens, of sickness, of judgment. Elias sat up slowly on his straw-filled cot, wincing as his joints cracked. He reached for his shoes, the leather torn and flaking, and slipped them on. The shop was colder this morning, and a film of moisture clung to the bottles on his shelves. Mold bloomed quietly in the corners. Outside, the town was waking. A child screamed in the alley. Someone shouted about a stolen loaf. A horse groaned as it pulled a wagon through the mire. But underneath it all, that sound again. Scritch, 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 from the cellar. He knew he'd have to go down there eventually. The tinctures he needed to brew were stored in crates near the back wall, but the last time he had descended, he saw movement, not just rats but something more. A nest, maybe, or a hole. One that led deeper. He lit a stubby candle and descended the stone steps, each one worn smooth from decades of use. The air thickened with the scent of wet wood and rot. Cobwebs clung to his sleeves. His breath puffed out in ghostly clouds. The scratching stopped the moment he stepped onto the cellar floor. Elias stood still, listening. Drip, drip, drip. Water, or blood, or worse. He shuffled toward the crates, each step crunching against debris. He reached into the box for the jar of dried fever root when he felt it a twitch against his foot. He froze. Another twitch, then a squeal. He looked down. Dozens of red eyes stared back at him. Just before the swarm scattered, a wave of tails and claws disappearing into a crack near the foundation. And there it was, the hole. He had seen it before but never dared to look closely. Now it was larger, chewed open. A foul wind blew from it, warm, sour, and unsettling. He backed away slowly, clutching the fever root to his chest. Back upstairs, he bolted the cellar door and leaned against it, heart racing. Maybe it was time to leave Eldergate. But where would he go? Every town was the same: filth, decay, and rumours of worse. He stepped outside and was nearly knocked over by the scent. Someone had emptied a chamber pot right by the door. Again, he muttered. It's the 4th time this week. No use complaining. No one would listen. He made his way to the centre square. A woman stood on a wooden platform, shouting about penance and purity. Behind her, a young man was strapped to the stocks, his face bruised, his tunic damp with spit and waste. His crime? They said he spoke of clean water and a world without rats. Witchcraft, surely. Elias watched as a rat scurried past the platform, stopping to nibble at something unidentifiable in the mud. At the far edge of the square, Brother Anselm was preaching. His sermons had grown darker since the plague returned. He spoke now of holy suffering, of how the rats were sent to test their devotion. The filth purifies, Anselm cried. The pain is proof. Elias turned away. He didn't have the energy to argue. Not today. He made his way back through the alleyways, past sickly dogs and coughing children. Flies buzzed in clouds around open drains. He reached his shop and found a smear of something red on the door handle. He wiped it away with his sleeve. Inside, he tried to return to work. The rat hole was still on his mind. Something was down there. Something watching. But there were remedies to mix. Fever to break. Customers would come, each one more desperate than the last. Evening crept in like a stain. The town bell rang in the distance. Another death. He lit another candle and began grinding dried bark in his mortar, the rhythmic motion calming his nerves, until the scratching started again. Scritch, scritch, scritch. This time, from the wall behind him. He closed his eyes. The town wasn't just filthy, it was alive with things best left unnamed. And the rats, they were just the beginning. The night deepened, and the streets of the town lay heavy with silence, broken only by the shuffle of rats under broken carts, and the trickling flow of waste weaving through the cobbled alleys like a forgotten river. Cassian, wrapped in a rough woolen cloak, sat crouched beneath a shuttered window, sleep clinging weakly to him as the stench of decay refused to fade. Across the way, a woman leaned out of a second-story window and emptied a bucket. The splash against the stone echoed like thunder. Human waste. It was routine. Every house did the same, and those caught beneath it learned to walk close to walls, never in the center of the street. Cassian watched it flow, and then, without fanfare, a child stepped into the stream barefoot, unaware. A cough escaped her lips, wet and deep. A shadow from the alley approached, her mother. She scooped the girl up, hurriedly brushing fleas from her collar and pulling her hood close. They passed Cassian, and he saw the girl's pale face, her eyes glazed with fever. In the old days, someone might have called a healer. Now, no one would dare open their doors. He stood slowly. A gutter rat skittered past his boot. Cassian made his way toward the public square. There, a cart lay overturned, its contents spilled and forgotten. Cabbage heads turned black, crusts of old bread hard as rock. A butcher's discarded offal pecked by crows even in moonlight. Beyond the cart, the well stood, or what remained of it. Someone had dropped a dead cat in the bucket days ago. Now the townsfolk travelled farther uphill, to the cracked fountain near the abbey, where the water ran thinner, but hadn't yet soured. As Cassian passed by the well, the air thickened. It wasn't only filth that haunted this town. It was neglect. It was rot. And it wasn't just the walls that crumbled. It was the spirit of those within them. A group of townsmen emerged from a side alley. They carried torches. In their midst, a hunched figure, thin, trembling, a man accused of bringing disease. No trial, just fear. They pushed him to the ground near the butcher's stall. One man raised a whip. Cassian looked away. Oh, looked away. He had learned long ago that in this town, even silence could be punished. And witnessing was not the same as helping. When the man's screams began, no one came to stop it. And when they stopped, no one asked why. Cassian walked again, his thoughts sluggish under the weight of despair. He reached the edge of the cemetery, or rather, the mass graveyard that had replaced it. The wooden crosses were scattered, many fallen. Some bodies had no markers at all. The ground here never dried. The soil was too thick with death. He stared at a small wooden post. It was crooked, half rotten. The name carved in it had faded. But he remembered, a child, from the tavern, gone in one night. He knelt there for a moment, a brief broken prayer on his lips. As he rose, a scream pierced the darkness. Not from the town, but from the fields beyond, a woman. He hesitated, then ran. Cassian sprinted past the last stone wall of the town, his boots kicking up soft dust as he crossed the overgrown road that led into the woods beyond. The scream still echoed in his mind, though the night had swallowed it whole. No torchlight ahead, no voices now, just the rustle of leaves whispering secrets only the forest knew. He slowed. Dark silhouettes of crooked trees surrounded him, their branches like bony fingers reaching for the sky. Here the air shifted, less foul, yet heavier, as if the earth itself was watching. Cassian's breaths came quietly now, controlled. He passed a row of hollowed stumps, their insides blackened with mold and ash. An old logging camp once stood here, abandoned since the first fever hit. No one spoke of it anymore, but some said the sickness began here, when they unearthed something not meant to be disturbed. He stepped carefully. Mud gave way beneath his foot, not from rain, but from seepage. The ground was wet, too wet. Then he saw it, a stone circle, hidden beneath a collapsed branch and tall weeds, old, cracked, covered in symbols he didn't recognize or perhaps refused to. Cassian crouched beside it. In the center, a hole barely wider than a barrel's mouth. It reeked of iron and mildew. A low hum vibrated from within, almost like chanting or wind caught in a tunnel. He leaned in. He jerked back. No one was there, not behind, not in the trees. But the whisper hadn't come from the woods. It had come from the hole. He stood slowly, his instincts screaming to leave. Yet, something deeper, older, pulled him closer. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. He had heard that voice once before, in the temple beneath the arena. Cassian drew a small satchel from under his cloak. Within it, a folded parchment, smudged with charcoal, a map, torn from a watcher's journal. He opened it beneath the moonlight. The markings matched. This was the place. A root of the game, buried beneath the town's decay. Cassian turned. Behind him, the woods parted. A figure in robes, pale grey, faceless in the dark, stood watching him, silent, still. Another followed, and another. Soon, a half-circle of them lined the clearing. Watchers, or remnants of them? Ghosts, perhaps? Cassian didn't know. He only knew one thing. They had not come to stop him. They had come to witness. The ground beneath the circle shivered. A breath, a pulse, a pulse. And then the soil cracked open with a deep groan, revealing stone steps spiraling down. Cassian looked once toward the town, toward the graveyard, the poisoned well, the broken people living like shadows. Then, without a word, he descended. And so, Cassian disappeared beneath the earth. Then, into the rot, into the roots, into the place where even the watchers feared to linger too long. Above him, the forest stood still. Below him, the game waited, not with fury, but with patience. Some say no light has touched those steps since the city first fell. Some say the rot never ends, only changes its shape. And those who walk too deep, they return, but not as they were. Sleep now. Let the story echo in the quiet corners of your dreams, until the game calls again.